Hey everyone, YuGiOh here. As you can tell from my voice, I'm not sounding too good. I've actually caught COVID for the first time. It hasn't really left me with much energy to do anything. Heck, I don't really think I can muster the strength to even attack my opponents directly. So this got me thinking, can I beat YuGiOh Forbidden Memories without attacking? Well, let's find out, and on that, let's go over the rules. Numero uno, no attacking of any kind is allowed. This includes attacking my opponent's monsters as well. Number 2, all opponents must be dueled. No skipping things, I have to subject myself to every single opponent in this game. In free duel, I must also follow the above rules like with my challenge runs. The star chip trader is allowed, however, I am banning myself from using the pocket station. Otherwise, I'll just end up cheesing this by using an Exodia. And for added difficulty, I'll also be banning trading for the initial deck, since this is not a single type challenge run. However, to speed this run along, I will allow myself to clone cards via trading, otherwise we'll be here forever. That's all from me. I think I'll need to pass over to future YuGiOh, who's hopefully gotten better from this, to commentate the rest of this run.
Hey past YuGiOh, future YuGiOh here. I'm still not over COVID yet, but I have enough energy to kick this run off. Starting a new game, we're going to name our character No You. It will become very apparent why we called ourselves that, but for now, just know that we're not the ones that are going to be doing the attacking this time round. Kicking off the intro cutscene, Haishin is down to his old tricks, rummaging through some whatever the frick he's rummaging through, to locate the current plot device for this run. And guess what? There isn't one. This is going to play out exactly as the vanilla story intended, except this time, we're going to be a spectator, not getting involved in any fighting whatsoever. Kicking things off, we run away from Simon and make a beeline to the card shop to save our game. I haven't looked at our initial deck, but I'm not looking forward to sitting through the entire intro cutscene if I manage to lose to Simon. Making our way back to the palace, we jump into our first duel, against none other than our partner in crime in the machine run, Simon. And this will be the first opportunity we get to look at the deck that got given to us this playthrough. Flipping across, it doesn't look too great. However, since this is a no attack run, what I'm looking for is a splashable equip card and at least one field removal card. That's all we really need for now. And the equip card that we got awarded was a laser cannon armor. It's not that great, however, it's not necessarily horrible. It is compatible with a number of monsters, 149 to be exact. Regardless, we probably won't be relying too heavily on equip cards for our starting strategy. Speaking of, what the heck is our plan to beat this game if we can't attack? Well, we have 3 strategies. One for the early game opponents, one for the late game opponents, and one that works on about 90% of the duelists in this game. For Simon all the way up to the World Tournament preliminaries, the AI is very basic. So basic in fact that it will often attack into face down monsters directly. Therein lies strategy 1, defeating our opponent through face down wins. The first 2 to 3 of the opponents in this game only have monsters between 250 to 500 attack, making it very easy to have them chip away at their own life points. Guardian Stars are also a great way to get a free 500 and extra damage if you're familiar with the type matchups. One thing you still need to watch out for is your opponent's field. Left to their own devices, the starting opponents will fuse, albeit they'll use only cards present on their field like we just saw with Simon a minute ago. This, however, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Strategy 1 only works if our cards are face down. Having a maxed out field of 5 monsters prevents this from working, but luckily enough, your starting deck will either have a Raigeki or a Dark Hole to deal with these heavy hitters once they're no longer useful to us. In fact, Dark Hole would be the better card in this scenario rather than Raigeki, since it clears out your field without having to rely on your opponent summoning something strong. That covers off strategy 1. Before I head on over to strategy 2, I think it's worth answering the question as to why I decided to do this run out of all other things. Well, this is something I've actually had planned for next year's April Fool's video. But given that I have a very convenient plot point right now being sick, and I was basically on and off in bed, I was able to chip away at this run on my laptop since I couldn't sit at my desk for too long. So yeah, that's why I decided to do it. On that note, I would also love to give a shout out to NG+. He actually reached out to me asking if I had plans to do this video, else he wanted to attempt it himself. If you haven't checked out his channel, I highly recommend you do so. He does a lot of impossible challenge runs across a multitude of games. His vids basically got me through my COVID slump, especially the clankless Ratchet and Clank videos and the Spyro runs without gliding. Anywho, getting back to the duel, we now have a few more slots to place some face down monsters. Now, I could have spent a bit of time instead of starting the story preparing the deck to be a little bit better. What do I mean by that? Well, I could have challenged Duel Master K a few times so I can have a better run of monsters that I can leave face down. Rather than chipping away at 200-300 at a time, we might be able to pull off some 1000 point damage. But I wouldn't fret too much. As this video progresses, the duels will get faster and faster given the next strategies that I plan to employ in this video. Ironically, the harder segment of this video is actually the starting point of the game rather than the end game. It's really problematic because they are just so weak, and half the time you'll just end up sitting there trying to deck your opponent out. Which, I guess, spoilers, that's strategy number 3. If all else fails in trying to get direct damage from your opponent, go the attrition route. Try and see if you can force the opponent to fuse. Now, I mentioned that the way early game opponents work is that they'll only attempt to fuse with monsters that are on their field. This isn't always the case. On rare occasions they will try fuse out of their hand, or if they have something that can climb twice on the field, they might use up to 2 cards when doing a fusion with something. Zombies are a prime example of that. If they leave a lower level zombie monster on the field, the next fusion they attempt may use a plant monster, followed by a second zombie monster to make pumpkin. And that's how you'd get them to use up 2 cards, and thus deck out first before you do. Just note that the deck out strategy needs 35 turns in order for the duel to complete. But as a sweet reward, it is almost a guaranteed S-Tech, which is what I'll end up doing when we end up grinding for cards from opponents like PegaSUS. That's right, despite no attacking, we aren't free from Megamorph. If anything, we genuinely need that card in order for this run to be possible, but more on that later. We are now down to our last 2 turns of the game. Setting a face down graveyard in the hand of invitation, we pass back over to Simon, who thankfully has 2 Steel Scorpions that are both 250 attack. Using one of them to blindly attack our face down, we deal enough damage to defeat him. We win, and Simon dropped us an Arm Ninja, and this took 2 attempts to complete. Now, I made a mistake here. I ended up going to the duel grounds instead of saving my game and heading to free duel. But Jono, why is this a problem? Teana isn't that strong. Well, you're correct, Teana is not that strong. But my issue lies with the other villagers. When you enter the duel grounds for the first time, that is the only opportunity you have for challenging Villager 3, aka Old Greg. The minute you leave the duel grounds and trigger the Seto Cutscene, you are locked out from dueling him for the entirety of that playthrough. That's actually what ended the run for our Twitch Plays Forbidden Memories challenge. 8 hours in, they exited the duel ground without challenging Old Greg, causing them to restart, throwing away the little progress they had made. So what does this mean for us? Well, a smart person would challenge Teana, then skip the next 2 villagers and challenge Villager 3, then exit the duel grounds and then save their game. What did I do? I was cocky and confident. I challenged Teana, Villager 1, Villager 2, and Villager 3 all in one go, effectively making it its own final 6 run because I had not saved my game. And also, being as stubborn as a friggin' mule, if I had lost to any of them, I was committed to beating them all start to finish. I don't know why I did that to myself, and I don't know why I dragged the video out longer than it needed to be. But just know, for any time that I lost to the early game, whatever you want to call them, the Villager Trio, I restarted and did it from start to finish again. All while using the same deck as well, because I did save my game before I went to Simon. So yeah, I had to go and beat Blue Boy again. But I digress. Let's get back to the strategies. I've covered strategy 1, which is beating the game via face down wins. I've covered strategy 3, which is beating the game via deck out. But what about strategy 2? Well, this is something that we are going to end up taking advantage of for the second half of the game, very liberally. Strategy 2 looks to exploit an oversight with the way the game's AI decides whether to execute an attack or not. The game's AI doesn't perform basic math to determine if it will win a fight. It's not a 1 is less than 2, therefore attack scenario. Instead, the battle logic is as follows. The AI selects a monster and then searches each one of your zones for a monster weaker than its selection. This check is done purely comparing the base attack and defense of both cards. The AI then checks whether the attack between those monsters at their base levels is enough to reduce your life points to 0. If true, it attacks. If false, it goes to the next set of criteria. The AI then checks the Guardian Star alignment to see if the current matchup makes the target stronger than the AI's monster. It then checks for field boosts, if the target monster has equip cards applied, and then lastly it performs the calculation between itself and its target. It will commit to the attack if the selected monster is stronger than the target after all that has been taken into account. When it's laid out like this, you can see the issue with its logic and how easy it is to exploit. In short, so long as our life points are low enough to satisfy condition 2, the AI will attack our monster ignoring all of its stat boosts. This is the key strategy we'll be using to win this run, though it's a lot easier said than done, and you will find out very shortly. Getting back to the duel with Teana, she's simply too weak of an opponent to really do anything. Given that her deck is chock full of female subtype monsters, you're going to see a lot of Mystic Sands and Dark Witches. Her strongest monsters as well are less than 500 attack. Since she fused into a Pumpkin the King of Ghosts in the first 3-4 turns of the duel, she actually has a lower card count than what we do, meaning she's a prime target for Strategy 3, the deck out route. So, regrettably, we have to grind down the remaining, 12 turns in order to defeat her, unless I somehow get lucky and have her attack into my monsters. But judging by the fact that she has 6,250 life points, that is not at all likely. So we're just going to have to grind down the clock till we defeat her via attrition. I'm actually going to dial up the speed up right now, so apologies in advance for the motion sickness. Just want to get through this duel quickly, especially given that you know what we're trying to achieve. The current speed up has shaved off about, I'm going to say 2.5 minutes. It isn't much, but just be thankful that I'm the one playing these duels and you're not. Happy days there. You know what? Maybe for the next set of duels, I should jump cut to the last few turns, but I feel that it holds ground that I could be cheating if I do that. So, sit there and suffer. To be fair, it can't be worse than the Twitch Plays Forbidden Memories run. I think I timed it at about 4 hours to complete a total of, I'm going to say like 8 duels. It was horrible. For those wondering, that run is still being edited. It will eventually make its way to YouTube, albeit as a summarized version. Getting back to the duel, we are now down to the last literal 2 turns of the game. Teana hasn't got much. We summon literally anything, pass the turn back to me, and we end. Teana goes down via deck out, and awards us a final flame since this is a guaranteed S-Tech. We also did this in 2 duels. Moving on to Villager 1, aka Jussel. I sub in the cards we won thus far. Nothing major, one was a final flame and the other was an arm ninja. I did say that I lost one time to Teana. Well, what happened? Simple answer was an unlucky fusion. Teana dropped a Mystic Sand on me while my life points were really low, and she took me out as I was going for a deck out. Sorry, nothing more elaborate than that. Anywho, number 1, enough about that, let's look into Villager 1. Now, Villager 1 is about as tough as Teana and Simon. The strongest base card in his deck is at 600 attack, and that is Muka Muka. This means that we can work with chip damage so long as he doesn't fuse. One thing worth noting in terms of AI behaviour, it's something that I've observed throughout this run. The AI will look to attack with a monster they've just summoned, unless it is weaker than your strongest card. Why is this useful? Well, it means you can still bait the opponent into attacking your face down card, even if they have a strong fusion on the field. Unfortunately, Jussel isn't really letting me showcase this. Instead, he ended up pulling off a fusion, making his card count a little lower than mine. Thus is good. This means we can go for a deck out. Deck out might also work to our favour, because if you S-Tech him, he has the ability to drop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 equipped cards and a Dark Hole as well on that matter. Fingers crossed we get lucky with that. The main equipped cards I'd be looking to target from him are Beast Fangs and Black Pendant. The rest of them, They're a bit situational, those being Elf's Light, Steel Shell, Silver Bow and Arrow, and Book of Secret Arts. Oh, and Follow Wind. Which I guess also poses the question, what is our deck going to look like for the rest of this run? Well, I do have a plan, sort of. Though I did start the game off blind getting whatever deck was given to me, I can see at least a type or a subtype that stands out above the rest. I'll cover that off a bit later as I go through my grinding. But for now, we have to exhaust, how many turns? 23 turns in order to deck out Jussel. The plan for the rest of this duel is to leave my Pumpkin in defense to defend against him. The strongest card Jussel is capable of fusing into is Flame Cerberus. And his second strongest is of course another Pumpkin. So with that said, I have enough to just win this duel by doing nothing. So I'm going to up the speed once more. Remember, if you don't want to sit through these duels from start to finish, I highly suggest you look at the timestamps I have in my video description. Duels like this are the exact reason why I put them in starting from day one. Okay, speed up begins now. Now, earlier you heard me mention something about Guardian Stars. I'm not actually sure whether I've covered this off in any of my videos. So, on screen, I'm going to show you the Guardian Star alignment. This is something you can find in the instruction manual that came with your YuGiOh Forbidden Memories game. Guardian Star alignments actually follow two separate tables. On the one side, you have your Sun, Moon, Venus and Mercury, and on your other side you have more of your elemental signs. These might be a bit jarring at first to remember, but for anyone that has played the Digimon World Series games, the signs actually follow the same alignment. On the right side up top you have Water, Fire and Grass, and on the bottom side you have Wind, Rock and Electric. As for the left side, there is a way to probably discern them if you look at Dark Magic versus Light Magic, but honestly it's 4 signs. Actually, you know what? I've come up with a better chart. Let me put that on screen. There we go. I understand my audience, and 100% you'll remember the alignments from this point on. And yes, for those of you that have jumped in already like the weebs that you are, I know that there is not a Sailor Sun. I think the closest thing there is High Priest Helios, but good luck remembering that if I added it to the chart. Instead, I took some fan art from the KB fan project. Anywho, number 2, I digress. I am filling in time. What I'm likely going to do for the early game duels is actually introduce some trivia. But this time, given that it's not a type monster run, I'm actually going to cover off the field spells and traps in this game. I'll start that up in the next duel. But for now, we return back to the duel. We actually have 7 turns left, which is not that bad given that this has been sped up about, I think it's 3.5 times? Maybe I should have gone to 5. But yeah, it's been sped up about 3 times. Villager 1 hasn't summoned anything that poses much of a threat to us. We did pop off an earlier forest which boosted our Queen of Autumn leaves to 2300 attack. Again, like I said, it is stronger than anything he can summon, and his two strongest cards are Flame Cerberus and Mystical Sand. Truthfully, I didn't know he could pull off a Mystical Sand. I didn't realise he had a Dancing Elf. Oh well. Summoning the absolute behemoth of a card that is Zone Eater, we pass the turn back to ourselves. There are 3 turns left. He has nothing he can do. No matter how much he flails, we've won this. Summoning whatever the heck we feel like, I have to still remember to put them in defense. If you don't pay attention to this game, you will lose. And trust me, that happens more often than I'd like to admit. We're now entering the final turn of the game. Passing the turn back to me, I summon literally everything, pass it back to Jussel, and we win. He dropped us a Milus Radiant, and this took us 2 attempts to complete. He's actually not that bad because he's compatible with a large number of equip cards. Sadly, none of the ones we have are the ones he's compatible with. Oh well. Our next opponent is the snot-nosed brat known as Malairuka. Now, as an opponent, he's a step up in difficulty. The key thing that he tries to showcase is fusions, so there is a very good chance that he will fuse fairly early on in this duel. That's going to be the strategy for defeating him, decking him out, unfortunately. But never fear, trivia is here, and this time we're going to look at all the direct damage cards available to us in Forbidden Memories. Starting off with the lowest of the low, we have Sparks. In Forbidden Memories, Sparks inflicts 50 damage to your opponent's life points. Oh, what an effect. In the IRL TCG, however, it inflicts 200 points of damage to your opponent's life points. Again, nothing really that special. However, with burn cards, a single card doesn't make a difference. Ultimately, Chain Burn is a thing that was very problematic in the TCG, And heck, even in the video games, going as far as GX Duel Academy, my main deck was a burn deck. It was a very degenerative deck that spammed Dark Room of Nightmare. Believe it or friggin' not, the card Sparks has even had an errata. I know, what the heck about this card could have been errated that was so unclear? Well, it was the concept of damage versus direct damage. The card started out as saying direct damage and was later errated again, ironically in the same pack, to say damage. On top of which, it was changed from being called a magic card to a spell card, in line with basically everything else that was happening at that time. You can thank Wizards of the Coast for that one. Anywho, number 3, moving up in the world, the next card after Sparks is Hinotama. Hinotama is another spell card in Forbidden Memories, and it inflicts double the amount of damage in Sparks. Wait for it, 100 points of damage to your opponent's life points. Ooh. In the TCG, this amount wasn't increased as much. Instead, it inflicts 500 points of damage to your opponent's life points. The card itself also debuted in Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, as a common no less. With our firepower increasing exponentially, the next card on our list is Final Flame. It inflicts a whopping 200 points of damage to your opponent's life points. Its effect in the TCG didn't jump up that well, unfortunately. Instead, it inflicts 600 points of damage to your opponent's life points. Though it is an increase from Hinotama, going from 5 to 6 is a bit of a letdown. Final Flame also debuted in Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, as a rare of all things. The card artwork for Final Flame was also changed. The original Japanese artwork, freaking hell man, had some guy being burnt on a cross, before being changed to this orc-looking thing receiving the golem treatment. In Dark Duel Stories, the card maintained its original Japanese artwork as well. The next direct damage card on our list is Ukazi. In Forbidden Memories, it inflicts 500 points of damage to your opponent's life points. As for the TCG, it inflicted 800 points of damage instead. Ukazi released in the TCG as part of starter deck Kaiba Evolution, and interestingly, has only been printed in other starter decks, those being Starter Deck 2006 and Starter Deck YuGiOh 5Ds 2009. Hold on to your seats people, cause things are starting to heat up. The next card on our list is Tremendous Fire, and is the last of the direct damage cards in Forbidden Memories. Tremendous Fire inflicts a whopping 1000 points of damage to your opponent's life points. In the TCG, its effect is pretty much the same, albeit with a bit of a double-edged sword to yourself. Instead, Tremendous Fire in the TCG says that it inflicts 1000 points of damage to your opponent's life points and 500 points of damage to your own life points. The card artwork itself for Tremendous Fire has also been censored when it was localized for the English release. The original artwork had the Fire Fairies naked instead of being covered in their blue clothing in the English release. Both Tremendous Fire and also Hinotama also appeared on the card artwork of Damage Translation. And that's about it for direct damage cards in Forbidden Memories. I will say that Tremendous Fire is going to be a bit of a problem for us, especially when we utilize the self-KO strategy. The opponents we need to watch out for that have this card in their deck are Dark Knight, Haishin, and oddly, Jono too. Dark Knight will be our biggest problem. His AI is designed around card disruption rather than raw power. You'll see what I mean if we get to him. On that note, I want to address the key question that's been commented on most of my runs since I started this challenge series. No, you cannot beat the game with just spell cards. They cap off at 5,550 life points of damage. And Tremendous Fire on that note is only obtainable from Haishin and the final 6, with Haishin having a 0.05% chance of dropping it, basically the same odds as Labyrinth Tank. Even for the purposes of this playthrough, the burn strategy isn't really all that viable unless I really want to spend, 4 to 5 turns trying to deal 2,550 life points of damage. Yeah, not ideal, especially when you get to see what sort of damage amounts we pull off when we get to our final deck. But I digress. Anywho, number 4, we have about 3 turns left of the duel. Villager 2 isn't really doing much, we are still running a battle of attrition here. There is definitely more and more trivia I can cover off, but I think I might hold off on that for old Greg. And trust me, you're gonna need it, because this guy is a royal pain in the ass to deal with. More on that later. Having the turn passed back to us, we set our final monster. Giving the game back, Villager 2 decks out and awards us a red medicine. Get ready for this, we lost to him 4 times. That means I went out of this game, logged back in, re-attempted Teana, Simon, Villager 1 to get back to this little brat. If that's not dedication, I don't know what is. But enough of that, we are on to old Greg, and my god, is this guy a pain in the butt for reasons I'll explain now. This old man field fuses instead of hand fuses. What does that mean? Every time he wants to enact a fusion, he for some reason is geared to almost always use his field instead of his hand. That makes it exceedingly difficult to get a deck out. Plus, given that we only have one equip card, he can easily fuse over the top of it. He's got problem cards such as Mystical Sand and also has access to Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. To top all of that off, you can't leave the duel arena. Doing so locks you out of further duels with him, like I explained earlier. My best strategy for this guy unfortunately will be a deck out. Given that I have access to only one equip card, it doesn't really help with the self KO strategy. He's got far too wide of a fusion pool that can counter us. Thankfully, in one of his earlier turns, he did end up fusing into a magical ghost. So, we are 1 card ahead of him, and that's all I need to defeat him. So, on that note, whilst we grind down this duel, let's continue on with the trivia. We've covered all the direct damage cards, now let's cover all the life point recovery cards. I don't think I'm going to use them for this playthrough, but nonetheless, here they are. And the first card on our list is Muyang Curry. Muyang Curry increases your life points by 200, which is a pretty stark contrast to Sparks, which damages your opponent for 50. All in all, the life point boosting cards grant you more life points, which I guess is fair given that you lose momentum each time you use one. As for the TCG, Muyang Curry debuted in the World Championship 2010 card pack, and again was also reprinted in the 2011 card pack, and has not been reprinted since. The TCG effect and the Forbidden Memories effect are the same, given that they both boost your life points by 200. As for the card artwork, it also appears in the background of Spicy Spy, being held by the waitress no less. As for the curry itself, Muyang Curry is a Japanese curry restaurant franchise with several shops in East Shinjuku and Ikebukuro. I can't pronounce anything Japanese. Anywho, that's about it for the delectable dish. We now move on to the second recovery card, and this time it's Red Medicine, which I have to admit I could sure use some right now because I'm still not 100%. Anywho, number 5, Red Medicine, like its TCG effect, increases your life points by 500. In the TCG, Red Medicine debuted in the Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon pack. And for its Forbidden Memories drops, you can obtain it from Duel Master K, Labyrinth Mage, Mai Valentine, Mountain Mage, Villager 1, Villager 2, Villager 3, and Weevil UnderMyWood. As for the anime, this appeared in YuGiOh Episode 1, inside Kaiba's briefcase, like with basically every other card mentioned in this series. In Forbidden Memories, you can also obtain Red Medicine by fusing 2 Muyang Curry together. And I guess if you fuse 2 Red Medicine, you'll end up with the next card on the list, which is Goblin's Secret Remedy. In Forbidden Memories, Goblin's Secret Remedy increases your life points by 1000, which is actually higher than what it does in the TCG. The TCG version of this card increases your life points by only 600 points. This card, like many other healing cards before it, debuted in the Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon booster pack. As for its anime appearances, it appeared in Episode 6 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, in the dummy deck prepared by Playmaker. Getting back to Forbidden Memories, fusing 2 Goblin Secret Remedies will result in Soul of the Pure, which is the next card we're going to cover off. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, I've sped up this portion of the duel as well. We have to churn through another 12 turns before we defeat Villager 3. So, enjoy the trivia while we get to that. As mentioned before, the next card we're looking at is Soul of the Pure. It increases your life points by a whopping 2000 in Forbidden Memories, which is drastically different to its TCG effect, where it only increases your life points by 800. Soul of the Pure was released worldwide in Dark Beginnings 2. It did however have an earlier release in North America, releasing in Tournament Pack 2. The card artwork for Soul of the Pure had changed drastically between the Japanese OCG and the international release. The original artwork, if I can get it on screen, depicted a purple-haired angel cutting her finger and bleeding blood on herself, whereas the international release for some reason changed it to blonde and had her, I don't know, blinking out a bubble. We'll pause there for now and get back to the duel. Old Greg managed to summon out a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, That is not good for me. If he happens to take out my Neku too, that's it. That's a free attack on my life points and the duel is over. I've locked out his Neku from attacking given that I have my own. And due to its large attack power, the only monster he's going to hit with is Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, unless I summon something weaker face up. Oh, thank God we have a Raigeki. I forgot that was in my deck. With 2 cards left and 3 monsters on our field, the duel is as good as ours. And I am genuinely happy, because old Greg, I'll admit right now, I did not defeat him first try. I had to go back a number of times. How many in fact? Well, now that the duel is over and he awards us, an Axe of Despair, I can tell you that he took 5 attempts to take down. Finally exiting the duel grounds, we have a Mage Festival to attend. Skipping through literally all the dialogue, the only thing on my mind right now is saving my game. We're confronted by Seto, who asks us to challenge him to a duel. No, not happening. Can't be bothered. Skipping through the rest of the dialogue, he informs us that he'll meet us at the duel grounds. Hooray for that. Entering the card shop, we finally save our game, and it's time for some much needed grinding. Our goal is to farm equip cards from all the opponents currently accessible to us. First up is Simon, and he dropped us a Horn of Light and a legendary sword, followed by a Dark Hole, and in between we were lucky and he also dropped us a Spellbinding Circle. We then targeted Villager 2 and he dropped us an Electro Whip. Then made our way down to Duelmaster K to farm up all the other equips available to us. Those were Insect Armor with Laser Cannon, Mystical Moon, Malevolent Nuzzler, Raised Body Heat, and Cyber Shield. Now that we have a good equip pool, the next challenge is putting a deck together using the random assortment of monsters that we have. The monsters that we need to pick need to have either a consistent type or subtype, and have a mix of strong and weak stats that we can use to take advantage of the exploit. On screen is the deck we ended up putting together. The subtype that we picked is the female subtype. Not only do they span a number of core types, but they're all compatible with 3 equip cards: Malevolent Nuzzler, Electro Whip, and Cyber Shield. They can also fuse into 1800 and above monsters if things start to get dicey. Oh, and I did end up getting a fake trap from Simon, so I just chucked that into the deck as well for some insurance. As for the Mystical Moons, those are there for when we fuse into Neku. Getting back into the game, we make our way to the duel arena and face off against Jono 1. The equip cards we unlock from defeating Jono 1 are Black Pendant and Salamandra. Black Pendant is probably the only useful one to us, as a lot of the females also fall under the category of Dark Spellcaster. However, I think we have enough to get us through a good chunk of the game, so we'll leave it for now. Now, I am purposely going to leave my field open. The life point range I'm looking for will sit around under 1000 life points for the next couple of duels. The reason for that is because the early game opponents still have monsters around the 500 attack mark. I will need to rely on the AI to fuse so it can see an attack win over my monsters. And right now, I think we're fairly close to it. Beefing up an Arlone using the 2 Malevolent Nuzzlers in my hand, I also have another 2 equipped cards on the field. This will bring my monster to 2800 attack. For the time being, I'm still going to leave it in defense because the opponent can't see a win if we factor in its original attack points of 800. I'll need to reduce my life points even further. For added insurance as well, I'm going to also beef it up wherever I can with any equipped cards I happen to draw. Oh, and for those asking where Arlone even came from, well, as I was doing the S-Tech grinding against Duelmaster K, Simon, and Villager 2, I did amass a few extra cards. That's where all the females came from. The remainder were things already present in my deck. And there we go, I set up the bait. Putting down an attack position Barrel Lily, it cops 700 points of damage. We are very close to triggering the glitch. Summoning forth an Angel Witch with 800 attack points, I am hoping it attacks it again with Queen of Autumn Leaves. And it does. Great, our life points are at a very comfortable 550. It's time to trigger the glitch. Setting literally anything because I had nothing else in my hand, I switch Arlone into attack and watch the magic happen. Attack 1 with Ushi Oni, attack 2 with Queen of Autumn Leaves, and I think the opponent will stop there. Like I said before when explaining the strategy, the opponent currently sees Arlone as 800 attack, not 3800 attack. This is why it's deciding to attack into it, like so. The strategy you see before you is what we're going to employ for basically the rest of the game, and you can clearly see how much it speeds up this duel. Our opponent is down to 4,350 attack points, and it's only been about 10 turns. Actually, maybe even less. And you can also see why I focus this on monsters that are under 1,000 attack. As our opponents get stronger, this strategy just gets better and better. Now, spoiler alert, there's one thing to mention with Jono 1. He has Nitemare in his deck. Does that sound bad? Not really, 100 life points of damage. Unfortunately, he pulled it off against me one duel. That's why it took me 2 goes to defeat him. There we go, with Jono 1 defeated, it's time we take on Seto 1. Now, I'm expecting these duels to go a lot faster now that we've improved our deck, so let's just see how we go. And right off the bat, we haven't drawn into that great of a starting hand. I'd like to see more equipped cards, that way I can simply leave the field open, set them and pass. But hey, we're still at the mercy of RNG. Seto 1 as an opponent is better with fusions than most of our others. However, his deck is still also full of relatively weak monsters. So our target for the self-KO trick would need to be either Dancing Elf, Queen's Double or Key Mace, because all 3 of those are under 500 attack. And fortunately for us, one of those is already in our hand. Whilst we play out this duel, I'm going to pick up where we left off with the trivia. The last recovery card we covered was Soul the Pure, so as expected, the next one on our list is Dianketa the Cure Master. In Forbidden Memories, Dianketa recovers 5,000 life points when used, which is massive. It's worth noting, however, that in Forbidden Memories, your life points cap at 8,000, so using it whilst on full will do absolutely nothing. Briefly back to the duel, we begin powering up our Key Mace, now that our life points are close to 2,000-ish. A few more hits and the self-KO trick is activated. Getting back to the trivia, in the TCG, Dianketa restores 1,000 life points, which in contrast to Forbidden Memories, is pathetic. Especially given that the first rulebook still had duels set to 8,000 life points. At the time of this card's release, which was Starter Deck Yugi, it probably seemed like an amazing card, given that the Duelist Kingdom anime was played with 2,000 life points. Heck, most of us in the playground probably played with the same rules too. But if you follow the actual rulebook, it wasn't anything special to my knowledge. Anywho, number 6, Dianketa as a card is actually based off an old Irish god of healing called Dianket. Now I can't speak Irish nor Gaelic, so I apologise for that pronunciation. Looking at the card artwork, it was thankfully censored for the English release. The Japanese art has an old lady with a dress half falling off. The YuGiOh GX anime didn't really get that memo, because in the English release of the show, it still used the OCG artwork for the card. Speaking of artworks, this card appeared in the background of 2, those being Healing Wind and Master's Cure. Before I get to the card counterparts, in Forbidden Memories it's also worth noting that fusing 2 Dianketa the Cure Masters will result in a Megamorph. Briefly pausing the trivia, we get back to the duel and it looks like we've procced the self-KO trick. And not a moment too soon in that fact, we are actually dangerously low on cards. I've got about 3 left, now 2 if you count this turn. And unfortunately Seto looks like he's playing things a bit safe. All I can really do for now is only go 1 card at a time and beef up my Key Mace wherever I can. I am hoping that he fuses at least one of these turns so he can attack me directly. And there we go. Oh, redeemed. Sort of. Okay, we absolutely need him to attack next turn, otherwise we lose. Yes, thank goodness. With a trusty guide of Fierce Knight, he self-KOs himself into oblivion and we get a Mushroom Man. And Seto thankfully only took 1 duel to defeat. I'll have to continue the trivia at a later time, because now we have a cutscene. Before we get too trigger happy and jump into it, we're going to go to the card shop and save our game. Save our game. Geez, the amount of times I do that when I record and re-record over it, I've lost count. It's the equivalent of my current Anywho counter. Anywho, number 7, Simon banishes us to our room. It makes sense. I'm still recovering, and a bit of bed rest will do me some good. Whilst resting, Haishin invades the palace once more. He caught wind that there's a virus out there with a bigger kill count than he has. Not wanting to be outdone, he resumes the slaughter. The resident kill count informs us of the current plotline taking place. Not wanting to get involved, because we're not allowed to attack, and we don't have the energy to do it, we walk outside for some fresh air. Seto begins interrogating me about this game's plot, becoming noticeably anxious that I haven't given him one. Simon frantically catches us outside and thinks we've caught a cold. He hands us a dirt dueler and tells us to go wash up inside. He also appears somewhat possessive over this piece of soap. We decide to head back inside, but forget about the current plot and bump into Haishin. He also seems to be very intrigued about the bar of soap we've been given. Looking to take it from us, he challenges us to a duel. Now this is probably a good way to test and see how well this deck will do against a strong opponent. Unfortunately, I don't think we are going to win. I haven't set this up for a Final 6 type match, and to top it off, I haven't drawn into that spectacular of a hand. I think for me to have stood a proper fighting chance, I would have needed to have fused into a Neku Gal 1 in turn 1, and then had at least 2 to 3 equip cards backing her up. Now Haishin reminds us that we were starting off the trivia for Dianketa the Cure Master. He decides to showcase that fusing 2 of them together will result in a Megamorph, and decides to attach it to his chakra. We get slapped upside the head with that attack, and unfortunately, it looks like it's game over for us. Despite our boosted Beast Warrior, we are no match for his roided up chakra. Believe it. So, as part of the canon storyline, we lose this duel against Haishin. Sorry, still no attacking allowed, so we can't speed this process up. Summoning forth more censored furry bait, we pass the turn back to Haishin, who humbles the ever-loving crap out of us with chakra, then proceeds to attack us directly with Sengenjin. We lose. Bum bum. After handing our bar of soap to Haishin, he accidentally drops it, incurring the wrath of Simon. The next bit of imagery speaks for itself. It is safe to say that Haishin's booty hole now resembles that puzzle on the floor. Homages to Blood In, Blood Out aside, we fade away into the staircase dimension and bring ourselves back to the modern times. We're at another YuGiOh Championship Series, and going by the date of June, it looks like we're at YCS Indianapolis. The winning deck this time, no surprise, was a Snake Eye deck, with the other top 3 opponents also playing Snake Eye decks. Hooray for diversity there. Regardless, congratulations on your win, Paolo, and it's back to the game for us. Our goal is to get up to PegaSUS and defeat him. Why? Because we're going to need to challenge him in free duel. Megamorph and Bright Castles are definitely going to be a great quality of life improvement for this deck. And also for the sheer fact that we're not attacking, we're already abusing the game in a way where it shouldn't be played. So why not speed up an already lengthy process? And speaking of things that are lengthy, let's continue with the Dianketa the Cure Master trivia. Dianketa the Cure Master has 6 counterparts introduced in the Rush Duel format. Those are Dianketa the Boogie Master, Dianketa the Security Master, Dianketa the Cooking Master, Dianketa the Cure Maiden, Dianketa the Gourmet Maiden, and Dianketa the Cleaning Maiden. Moving on to its anime appearances, there are surprisingly a lot of them. It appeared in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX in episode 36 as Chumley's crush card. I'm not making that up, the bloke was stroking it to this piece of cardboard. It then made 6 anime appearances in Zexal, those being episode 1 in Yuma's deck, episode 2 in the flashback, episode 26 and 27 in Strike Across Its Soccer Ball, episode 51 in the Dual Coaster Battle Royale by Quinton, and later in episode 53 in the same Battle Royale by Dextra. We are now nearing the end phases of this duel. We only have a few more life points to knock ourselves down with, so I'm going to fuse into a Neku Gal 2 to bait out the attack from his Flame Cerberus. With the 500 boost, we should be dropped down to about 900 life points. Sorry, math is incorrect, 1100. Can't count. Never mind, we have a Barrel Lily, so we make sure to set that using a Venus Guardian Star so it doesn't trigger Flame Cerberus as well. There we go, 100 life points, let the carnage begin. I'm expecting a win in the next turn, so as we draw up our hand, we're going to power up Angel Winch once more and just see how Rex responds. Summon, attack, and down. We win, Rex goes down, and he drops us another Mushroom Man. Sadly, this duel took me 2 goes to complete, and the root cause was simply just bad math getting my life points low enough. Anywho, number 8, we are on to Weevil Flippin' Underwood. Weevil is a small step up from Rex, in that he has on average slightly stronger monsters in his deck. Unfortunately, he also has a lot of defensive insects and just general regular insects with low attack. To compensate, however, he is much better at fusions, and I guess he has a Jirai Gumo in his deck. The strategy really is the same. Get myself into the red zone life point wise, and let him hit his head against us until he loses. I guess you could consider this the red Tearstone Ring run of Forbidden Memories. Anywho, number 8, with our strategy laid out, let's continue on with the trivia. We've covered all recovery cards and damage spell cards in this game. So let's move on to the other spells. I don't really have a theme for this trivia, but if I had to assign one, let's say it's a review of all the S-Tech cards that drop from this game. The next card on our list is Swords of Revealing Light. Swords of Revealing Light as a standalone card is a Pocket Station exclusive. In a regular playthrough, however, you can fuse into it by combining a Dark Piercing Light with a Shadow spell, which surprisingly makes sense if you consider flipping cards face up and binding them. Good job, Konami. Shame you left Shadow spell as a fusion in this game too. Classic Konami move right there. Just a heads up on the rest of the trivia, there's a frickin' lot of it, so it may span across 2 duels or even more. So, with that said, let's move to the TCG. Swords of Revealing Light debuted in the DCG as part of Starter Deck Yu-Gi and has been reprinted 32 times. No, I am not going to name all the packs where it was reprinted. Moving on to the card artwork, the card artwork of Swords appears in 5 cards, those being Swordsman of Revealing Light, Forced Activation, Heraldry Burst, Release Restraint Wave, and Scarlet Security. The swords also appear on the Tablet of Lost Memories in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and manga, appearing by the side of Pharaoh Atem. Swords of Revealing Light have several counterparts / retrains. Listing them out, we have Restraining Swords of Impact, Spiritual Swords of Revealing Light, Swords of Burning Light, and Swords of Concealing Light. Hopefully I remembered to edit in the images of those. And that's it for the card counterparts. I might hold off on its anime appearances for the next duel, because we've managed to trigger the self-KO trick. As we watch Weevil run into us time and time again, I suspect that this duel probably only has another 2 turns or so left. Let's see. Summon? No. Unfortunately, it looks like our life points are just shy from triggering the rest of the monsters, so I'm gonna have to make a sacrifice. But I need to be careful. If I bring out something too weak, he's going to KO us. 9 times out of 10, if I lose to an opponent, it's for that exact reason. Not that I didn't trigger the trick successfully, it's just that I miscalculated how strong some opponents can be, and that's led to an unfortunate wipeout early on. Anywho, leaving a healthy-ish Gigatech Wolf on the field, I think we're okay. Dropping another 300 life points, I think we're in range. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I was a bit presumptuous in holding off the anime appearances till the next duel. Oh well. This is exactly why I said Weevil was a bit of a weaker opponent. Cocoon of Evolution is not ideal for us. He does play a lot of things defensively. At the same token, he can top deck a Dry-Gumo, so if I play the wrong thing, it's game over. I'm going to risk it for the biscuit and put out a supporter of the Shadows. Based on what he's got in the field, I'm hoping from an attack from his Armored Zombie. Which we got. There we go. Just going to set a Raigeki just for the hell of it, and then watch him self-KO. Oh, there we go. That is nice and healthy. Attack 1, down, attack 2, and double down. Weevil is finally defeated, and we got a Spike Snail. And this bugged bunghole took 3 attempts to defeat. Oh boy, that took a while. Thankfully, this next duel against Mai shouldn't take as long. She is a stronger opponent, so I am hoping she has some stronger cards. And looking at her deck lists, cards seem to begin at the 800 attack mark, which is good for us. Good targets we can use are Key Mace and Queen's Double. I do, however, maybe need to watch out for a Spellbinding Circle. Our target should be beefed up fairly sufficiently, but there's a chance she could drop a Harpy's Pet Dragon and make quick work of us. Regardless, I've actually missed the card I should be worried about, which is Dark Hole. That is not good. We want to avoid that as much as possible. Anywho, number 9, we let her fire off some free attacks against us, so we're going to just jump straight back to the trivia, because you know how the rest of this song and dance goes. Ahem. Swords of Revealing Light appeared 41 times in the anime. Yes, I'm going to list all of those down, so strap yourselves in and open those brain holes because there's a lot of things to fill. Swords of Revealing Light debuted in Episode 1, Yugi vs Kaiba, Episode 14 in Yugi's duel against Panic, Episode 23 in Yugi's duel against Kaiba on that rooftop, in Episode 30 against Yugi and Mai in the Duelist Kingdom Finals, Episode 33 during Yugi's during Yugi's explanation to Joey about deck balance, in Episode 42 during Yugi's duel against Rebecca, in Episode 43 it also appeared but this time it was on the rack of cards the protagonists walk past when they enter the virtual world. It later appeared again in episode 45 when Yugi uses this against the Castle of Dark Illusions army. Episode 52, it appears on the poster on the Johnny Steps episode. Don't even know if that's the guy's name, but I'm going to call him that either way. It then appeared in episode 56 of Battle City in Seeker's Hand. In episode 85, we see it during Yugi's deck rebuild for Battle City. 97, it was used by Odeon against Joey. 93, it was used by Ishizu against Kaiba. Was that 93? I think that was 98. I think the week was wrong. I think that was episode 98. Anywho, number 10, back in the virtual world, it appeared in episode 106 in Duke's, Serenity and Tristan's deck. Later in 108 in Kaiba's deck rebuild. In 117, Yugi uses this against Noah. Then in Battle City Finals episode 124, Joey pops this card up in one of his flashbacks. And now we move on to Battle City, but I think I'll need to save that for another duel because we're actually on our final turn. Mai summoning something useless, she attacks into Alanway, and we win. Mai goes down and she drops us a Gokibor. And we did this in one try. Friggin' finally. We are inching closer and closer to PegaSUS, no pun intended, and our next opponent is the mad lad Bandit Keith. Being a machine duelist, regrettably, Bandit Keith's attack points start to drop significantly because he has cards like Steel Scorpion, Bat, and Mechanical Spider in his deck. He does compensate, however, by having stronger fusions. To top that off, there is also the ability for him to summon out a Metal Zoa, though in my experience, he prefers to summon out female monsters, having most of the cards in his deck geared towards a Dark Elf or a Mystical Sand. There we go, like we saw on screen. You know how this duel is gonna go, so let's continue. Back onto Swords of Revealing Light anime appearances, we are now up to Waking the Dragons. It appeared in episode 148 during Rex Raptor's Fantasy. In episode 158, Raphael used this card against Yugi. In episode 160, Yugi had a flashback, remembering the time he yeeted the Dark Magician Girl with his catapult turtle. Good times. It popped up later again in episode 163 as Yami uses this card against Yugi, and again in a flashback during that same duel. It then appeared in episode 200 in another one of Kaiba's briefcases, friggin' surprise there, and lastly, in episode 221, Yugi uses this card against his final duel against Yami to block the Tricky. And that's it for the main cast. We now need to move on to YuGiOh GX, but I think I might have a brief pause there for two key reasons. Number one, we seem to have triggered the self KO glitch, and number two, I think I'm going to pass out from the lack of breathing. Looking at the duel in a bit more detail, things aren't looking too good. I was expecting him to attack with the remainder of his face towns, but they appeared to be far too weak to continue the remainder of the self KO trick. I guess with that said, I have to go back to the trivia. Deep breath here, people, we're on to YuGiOh GX. Thankfully, there's only 3 episodes. Swords of Revealing Light appeared in episode 18 when Dimitri uses this card when he stole Yami's deck. It then appeared in episode 168 in a display case with a replica of Yugi's deck, and again in another display case in episode 179 during the graduation ceremony. Oh, how far it's fallen, relegated to a display case. On to 5Ds we go. It appeared in episode 18 in Professor Frank's duel against Luna, and then in episode 125 in Dragan's hand during his turbo duel against Jack. Up next, we have Zexal. Surprise, surprise, it is on strike across its soccer ball in episode 26 and 27. That is basically the Kaiba's briefcase of Zexal, and I'm not even joking. Lastly, it appeared in episode 103 during Nistro's explanation speech to Yuma. And we are done with the Swords of Revealing trivia. That took 3 friggin' duels. That's a lot. But thankfully, Bandit Keith goes down, gifts us a zombie warrior, and it's time for us to save our game. We enter another Shadi Cutscene. Ghost Boy over here informs us that we have an ancient doppelganger currently undergoing quarantine in a puzzle due to catching COVID. Socially distancing like the good eggs that we are, we touch Shadi and video call ourselves on Millennium Teams. We soon realise that we don't speak ancient Egyptian. The conversation goes about as well as all my meetings with my offshore team. After being asked to please do the needful, we return to the tournament and go about trying to free our past self from quarantine. And look, they even shared their process guides with us. What's that? They're blank? Welcome to life in the corporate world. Now, say it with me kids, Shadi is a pushover of a duelist. If you lose to him, you suck at this game, and you should end your run right here, right now. That statement is very ominous. Shadi is unironically our hardest opponent, simply because we have to be crappier than he is. I'm not joking. When playtesting this run on a New Game Plus file, he was probably my second hardest opponent to deal with, purely because of how low his monsters are. I decked out so many times because he attacks with the weaker monsters first, leaving me out of range to trigger the self KOs. Deck out was honestly my only viable option for this duel. And given that he fused into a Flame Cerberus turn 1, we're gonna have to go with that strat. Anywho, number 11, moving on to more monster debuffs. The next card we'll be looking at is Spellbinding Circle. In Forbidden Memories, Spellbinding Circle is one of the many cards that were converted from a trap to a spell. The card effect has changed naturally to fit in with the mechanics of Forbidden Memories. Rather than binding a monster, its effect now reduces their attack and defense by 500. Spellbinding Circle drops from Simon, Mai, Meadow, Seto2, Seto3, and Nitemare. Fusing 2 of these things together will result in a Shadow spell, and fusing 1 with a Fake Trap will result in a Curse Breaker. The card artwork for Spellbinding Circle has changed several times in the anime and manga, and I guess once in the TCG when it was localized internationally. The original artwork of Spellbinding Circle originally depicted Jewish symbolism. It was censored for the international markets, swapping the star/hexagram for a triangle. The revised manga then changed it again to look like a rejected DEF CON logo, which then changed again in the anime by adding more pointy bits. The last revision was the runic version we all know and see today in the TCG, which debuted in the Spell Ruler booster pack. That's all for the card art changes, now onto where Spellbinding Circle appears. But before I do that, it is worth mentioning that the circle in the original Spellbinding Circle card is the same circle as Dark Magic Circle, if that wasn't obvious to you. Anywho, number 12, I think we're up to 12, Spellbinding Circle appears in the card artwork of 12 cards, all of which have multiple versions of themselves depicting both the OCG and TCG versions of the circle. The cards in no particular order are Curse of Circle, Magician's Unite, Magician's Circle, Owner's Seal, Release Restraint Wave, Spell Reproduction, Exodia the Forbidden One, Left Arm of the Forbidden One, Left Leg of the Forbidden One, Right Arm of the Forbidden One, Right Leg of the Forbidden One, and Third Leg of the Forbidden One. And it was also the cover card for Magic Ruler and Duelist Legacy Volume 1. Oh, wow, that's a lot of places where this card appears. Do you know where it doesn't appear? That's right, YuGiOh Master Duel. The last time I checked, this card is still unavailable in that game. Why can't they just replace the artwork and put it in? Well, I think it's got to do with the Japanese name of the card. The card name in Japanese is Curse of Hexagram, so I think that's what's causing the problem, since Japanese is a selectable language, and that language is still making digs at the Star of David. Classic Japan right there. Now we move on to the anime appearances, and for those wondering how this duel is still going, let me break it down for you real quick. And there we go, that explains everything. Starting with Duelist Kingdom, Swords of Revealing Light appears in episode 10 when Yami uses this card and gets the Impersonator of Death. He then uses it in episode 14 against his duel against Panic. Later in episode 21, he pulls it off in his tag duel with Joey against the Paradox Brothers. Then in 29, Yugi sets this card during his duel against Mai, but I don't think he activated it from memory. In 33, this card appears when Yugi explains to Joey that he needs to have a balance between monsters, spells and traps. In episode 34, Yami Yugi uses this card in his duel against Joey, and then in episode 35, this card is shown in Yugi's hand during his duel against PegaSUS. Now let's see if we can wrap up Battle City before the turn's over. In episode 53, this card appeared on the poster that Yugi and Tay were looking at about the new Duel Monster shop. Then in episode 65, this card appeared in Yami's hand during his duel against Strings. In episode 35, Yugi uses this card in his duel against Joey, who was later possessed by Marek. In episode 85 you see this card when Yugi is rebuilding his deck for the finals, and lastly in episode 97, this card pops up when Kaiba figures out that spell cards only work on the Egyptian gods for one turn. We'll have to pause on the anime appearances there, because we're nearing the end of the duel. Passing the turn back to me, we fire off a Raigeki for the win, and pass the turn back to him for a deck out. We win, and we got an Aqua Snake, and fortunately we do not suck at this game, we did this in one try. Saving our game, we move on to our next opponent, and this time it's Yami Bakura. We are one step closer to PegaSUS, so I really hope this duel goes quickly. If not, never fear, there's still more Spellbinding Circle trivia to get through. We draw a rather crappy hand for our first turn, but that's okay. We need him to attack our life points directly a few times. Bakura as a duelist is very defensive. Nearly all the monsters in his deck are stacked at having higher defense over offense. That does not bode well for us. We got things in there as weak as 300 attack. But thankfully, being a mid-game opponent, his fusions are a lot better, as you can see with that twin-headed Thunder Dragon. Problem with that is I need to be cautious, because Bakura also has both a Spellbinding Circle and a Dark Hole in his deck. If I play my cards wrong, that's game over for me. So whilst we wait for Bakura to whittle down our life points, let's continue the trivia and we move on to the anime appearances in the virtual world. In episode 99, Yami Yugi uses Spellbinding Circle during his duel against Gansley. It then appeared in episode 103 during Teia's flashback. In episode 106, this card can be seen when Duke, Tristan and Serenity are building their deck. And lastly, in episode 108, you can also see this in Kaiba's deck when he's building it for his duel against Lecter. Moving back to the Battle City Finals, it appeared in episode 129 during Yugi's flashback. In 132, he sets this card during his duel against Kaiba. And lastly, in episode 140, this card popped up in a flashback Yugi had, remembering a random duel against Strings. In Dawn of the Duel episode 214, Akhenaten uses a spell that resembles this card to trap a Blue Eyes White Dragon. Moving on to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, in episode 7, this card was shown in the flashback that Cyrus had when he was remembering his duel against Zane. It finally appeared in episode 75 during a flashback that Tyranno Hasselberry had when he sees Domino Pier. And that, as they say, is that when it comes to the trivia for Spellbinding Circle. That was friggin' long, but it did get us 3/4 of the way through the duel with Yami Bakura. Getting back to the duel, we can see that we're not in self-KO range against Yami Bakura. This is because Old Mate decided to stack his field using Catapult Turtles. Taking a gamble with some attack position monsters, I think we're finally in range. Passing the turn back to him, he summons a Bistro Butcher, and we can finally see the satisfaction in watching him attack himself over and over again. Unfortunately again, because his monsters are a Catapult Turtle, they're currently doing the calculation of 1000 minus 800 equals 200. That's not gonna work for us. We have 500 life points left. I basically have to sit and wait for him to summon some stronger monsters. It shouldn't take too long. There we go. Wing Egg of New Life, and we have literally got 50 life points left on the bloke. Really regretting my decision to remove Final Flame out of my deck. But oh well, let's see what we can do. I'm expecting him to organically fuse at this point given the number of monsters on his field. Not needed, we got this. Spirit of the Mountain attacks into a mystical elf, and he goes down. Yami Bakura drops us a Phantom Duin, and this took us 2 attempts to complete. Going back to the card shop, we save our game, and we are finally up to PegaSUS. Hooray! What's not hooray is this guy as an opponent. PegaSUS sucked. I got some very unlucky RNG, to the point where about 60% of the duels I had against this guy had him use either a Megamorph, Raigeki, Meteor Black Dragon, or all 3 of the freaking things at the same time. To which, by the way, him having a Meteor Black Dragon in his deck is a 0.39% chance. That's how bad my luck was. As for him having a Raigeki in his deck, hey, 7.81%, see you later. Bright Castle, he really fuses those into a Megamorph, but nonetheless, he has a 5.86% chance of having those in his deck. Crunching the numbers, the cards that he has the highest rate of having in his deck, in order, are Raigeki, and then equally with the remaining odds, Dragon Capture Jar, Bright Castle, Harpy's Feather Duster, Invisible Wire, and Fake Trap. Yes, his deck is skewed against him using a Raigeki against you. He's probably the equivalent of facing me if I was coded into this game. So I get what I deserve with that one. Thankfully, as an opponent, PegaSUS has some rather high intelligence. He will often fuse into monsters, meaning that my weak mystical elves, Arlan Way, and everything else in between should be enough to trigger the glitch. I can't trick him to get some chip damage in by putting cards face down, because he has the Millennium Eye feature that the final 6 have. That means he knows exactly what set card is on your field. I guess they coded that in there so he can mimic the anime, but yeah, PegaSUS as an opponent and as an AI knows what cards you put face down. But enough of that, we're down to the last 2 turns of the duel. Getting his life points equal to our own, we set literally anything and pass it back to him. Firing off a Feather Duster for no reason, he attacks with Flame Cerberus, and we win. PegaSUS goes down, and he gives us Milus Radiant. Sorry, don't know why I smacked the microphone with that one. After defeating PegaSUS, we go ahead and save our game, and strap ourselves in for some grinding. It is possible to S-Tech PegaSUS, however we'll need to be going via the deck out strategy in order to do it. Doing it that way will net us both a Megamorph and a Bright Castle. Heck, as a kid this was the only way I actually knew how to S-Tech the bloke. In the process of grinding, we amassed a decent chunk of star chips, grinding for more where we needed to. Moving to the password machine, we used those to redeem a Labyrinth Wall and more copies of Angel Witch and Arlo Way. The rest of the star chips were used to redeem a Mystical Elf, Spirit of the Harp, and Lunar Queen Elysium. Yes, the videos on screen are out of order. After obtaining those cards, this is what version 3 of our deck looks like. We subbed out most of our monsters save for some beasts in order to fuse into a Neku 2. Bright Castle and Megamorph were naturally added in, and any non-female equip cards swapped out. With our grinding complete, let's head back to the story. Our next opponent is a Shizu. Now, for those of you that join me on the chat plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories, you know what happens when you leave this duel running for too long. That's right, Swords of Revealing Friggin' Light, and boy oh boy does she love to spam that thing. Swords don't really matter to us given that we're not using attacks as our win condition, but it's the secondary effect that drives me nuts. Using Swords of Revealing Light flips all my monsters face up. So, all those 3 or 4 Labyrinth Walls that I have set to you right now, if she drops that card, they all flip face up. Very friggin' annoying. But thankfully, she took the bait with 2 of them. Unfortunately, she had an Umi activated. I still got the defensive win, but it could have been better had it not been for the 500 boost. Anywho 13, there's the first Swords of Revealing Light. So on that note, maybe I should cover off what changes I made to the deck and what my overall strategy is going to be. The deck that we've just made isn't really all that different from the one we had before. The main upgrade I applied was subbing in some more defensive monsters that had at least 2000 defense instead of 1000. Spirit of the Harp and Mystical Elf are the 2 key targets I wanted in there. When we get to the final 6 matches, we're going to be up against some heavy hitters, so at the start I'm going to need to play defensively, and having a base of 2000 makes things a lot easier. The rest of the beast monsters in the deck are really only there for me to fuse into Neku 2. The times where I will do that would be most likely during the final 6, where I need a small chunk of life points taken off me. As for the rest of the cards, it's self-explanatory. Having low attack points makes it easier for the AI to see a win and trigger the exploit. So rather than floating around less than 1000 life points, I can probably bump myself up to be around 1000 to 2000. That should also put me out of range of Tremendous Fire. Plus, with all the extra equip cards, my duel should take a considerable less amount of time to complete in the later bits of the game. Well, that's what I'm hoping for at least. Anywho, getting back to the duel, she tried to attack me with a snake and lost. We won a Water Magician and Ishizu goes down in 1 try. Saving our game at the card shop, we are now up against the final opponent of the tournament, and that's Koiba. Now Koiba is surprisingly a problematic opponent if you leave the duel running for too long. He's sort of based off Seto, I guess, unironically, in that his deck has got a number of disruptive cards. The key things we need to watch out for are Stop Defense, Dark Hole, Crush Card, and Shadow Spell. He shouldn't activate Crush Card given that he will always have a better field position than us, but I don't know how the AI necessarily works on that one. There is a chance he could use it, but if anything, I'm expecting more Stop Defenses and Dark Holes in this match. That is of course if he doesn't decide to drop a Blue Eyes on us. We've managed to power up a Spirit of the Harp to some pretty busted defensive points. So, with that said, I think we'll continue on with the trivia. We've covered Spellbinding Circle, it's time for its upgrade, Shadow Spell. Shadow Spell is another card in Forbidden Memories that will swap from a trap to a spell card, and it's an upgraded version of Spellbinding Circle. Instead of reducing your opponent's monsters by 500, it reduces it by a whopping 1000. You can obtain it by fusing a Spellbinding Circle, wait for it, with another Spellbinding Circle. And also, if you recall from the Swords of Revealing Light trivia, you can fuse this with a Dark Piercing Light to make Swords of Revealing Light. Shadow Spell only appeared in 3 episodes of the entire anime series. The first one was in episode 27. Koiba used this card against his duel against PegaSUS. It then appeared in episode 2 of YuGiOh 5Ds in a flashback that occurred when Jack Atlas used this in his ground duel against Yusei. It then later appeared in episode 10 during Yusei's ground duel against Mr. Armstrong. And that's about it for the anime appearances. The card artwork for Shadow Spell appears in the Release Restraint Wave spell card. Just to clarify some of my earlier trivia, there are actually 2 artworks for Release Restraint Wave. One of them has Spellbinding Circle, the other one swaps Spellbinding Circle for Shadow Spell. As for its TCG releases, Shadow Spell debuted in the starter deck Koiba Evolution. As for who drops it in Forbidden Memories, nobody. You have to fuse for it, or combine it using a Pocket Station. With the trivia out of the way, or at least for Shadow Spell, let's get back to the duel. Koiba has a fairly stacked field against us. Unfortunately, my life points aren't low enough to trigger the self-KO trick. I'm going to have to sacrifice a few monsters to bring that number a little bit down. Let's see what our next draw offers us. Koiba fuses into a Stone D, which is good, and then passes the turn back to me. Faced with a choice, I can either consume a few Bright Castles and power up an Air Narmet, but I think I'm better off actually fusing it with Lunar Queen Elysium to make a Neku Gal. I'll save the Bright Castles for the next few turns because I have a feeling I'm going to have to repeat this a few times. And there we go, I was correct. He attacked with a Stone D instead of a Twin Head. Very frustrating. For this turn, I'm going to buff Lunar Queen Elysium to be stronger than a Stone D so I can bait out an attack from his Twin Heads. Koiba summons forth the king that is McBass and proceeds to attack us with a Twin Head. I think we're in range? Yes we are. Time to sweep. It's game over next turn given that he has one more Twin Head. I just chuck a Bright Castle on Spirit of the Heart because why not, and then wait for him to self-KO. Attack, bam, 3000 plus damage, and we win. Koiba goes down, he gives us a Raymond of the Red Sword, and we did this in one try. Koiba offers us his rod, which we photograph for future uses, and we have successfully done the needful. We return back to Egypt now that our time in quarantine is over. As you can hear from my voice, I've recovered a fair bit, so it's time to reconnect with everyone I've been avoiding while I've been sick. We return to the metropolis and visit the duel grounds. Unfortunately, as I was its best customer, it has gone out of business because nobody aside from me decides to buy from that place. Thankfully, we bump into Jono, who takes us back to a private duel ground. Jono and Teana decide to challenge me to a duel. Unfortunately, my energy levels are pretty low, so I'm not going to be attacking this duel either. First opponent we face is Jono 2. Now, Jono 2 is weaker than Koiba, and heck, probably weaker than most of the opponents in the tournament finals. What does this mean? Well, if you look at his deck, he has monsters that are under 500 attack. That is very annoying because it slows down the duel considerably. This also means that I need to bring my life points down to a very uncomfortable red range. Why is that range uncomfortable? 2 words: tremendous fire. That's right, Jono has a 4.88% of having that in his deck. That is the most common card in his deck composition formula. The target card I should have been using was Keymace, but unfortunately his Red Eyes and Garuzis would still be stronger than it if I had powered it up. I needed a Megamorph in my hand to turn the tides. So I go with Mystical Elf. Not bad, but not necessarily good either. What I am able to pull off, however, is some free damage with Labyrinth Walls. Since Jono doesn't have a Millennium Eye, which is what we call it in this game, he is unable to see my face down cards, so that's free defensive chip damage for me. And also, given that it has 0 attack, that is basically free direct damage to my life points, given that I've blocked him off with Mystical Elf. Now, I'm going to take a gamble here. Based on the monsters I have, I can fuse into a Neku Gal 2 and have him attack me with Garuzis for 2300. I have to hope that that's enough to trigger the rest of his cards to attack my mystical elf, otherwise it's tremendous fire next turn. Thankfully, his set card was a Vermilion Sparrow, and we win. Jono goes down, he drops us a Curtain of the Dark One, and this took me 3 duels to complete. Our next opponent is Teana 2. She's an easy opponent than Jono simply because she doesn't have a tremendous fire in her deck. Unfortunately, the rest of the monsters in it are friggin' weak. This one might turn into a duel of attrition, so I think I might have to kick up the trivia once more. So anywho, number 15 I think. The card on our trivia list that we'll be looking at this time is Dark Piercing Light. Dark Piercing Light is a spell card in Forbidden Memories. It can be obtained from Duelmaster K, Secmeton, Mountain Mage, Nitemare, Teana 1, Teana 2, all 3 villages, Weevil UnderMyWood, and Yami Bakura. It's an interesting card in Forbidden Memories in that it fuses to make quite a number of different things. If you fuse it with a Book of Secret Arts, you'll end up with a monster Boogaloo. If you fuse it with a Swords Revealing Light, you'll end up with a trap card or spell card, Shadow Spell. If you fuse it with a Bright Castle, you'll end up with the monster Castle of Dark Illusions. And lastly, if you fuse it with a Blackluster Ritual, you'll end up with the equip card Dark Energy. Moving to the TCG, Dark Piercing Light has only appeared in 2 packs, one of those being Dark Beginnings 2, and the second one, if you could even call it a pack, was the McDonald's promotions back in 2002 in North America. That's it. The card also doesn't have any anime appearances. And also, no further trivia about it, because we're at the end of that. Getting back to the field, I think we are now in range to trigger the self-KO trick. Beefing up our mystical elf, we are so close to winning this duel. I think I'm just going to set a card and hope that Teana fuses into something strong. Of course I have to wait for it to load up her field. Alternatively, the only other solo card I can think of is Battle King Orion. I'm going to take a risk here and leave Angel Witch in attack position. If she drops something that's at least 1800, that's 500 points of damage. Looks like we have the attack point tie, and it's back over to me. Now the play I can make here is twofold. I can either power up a mystical elf, or power up an Arlo Way to 1800 attack, and see if she has anything with a beneficial Guardian Star that can hit over it. I go for the former and pass the turn back to her. She summons, finally, there we go, Orion the Battle King. Attacking into herself, she loses, we win a Skull Servant, and Teana took 1 try to complete. Finishing our catch up with all of our friends, it's time to progress the story. Navigating down to the King's Valley, we say hi to Sadin. Apologies for the noise, a flock of rainbow lorikeets just flew past and triggered the ever-loving crap out of my birds. And for those asking when's the Winged Beast run, well, I was planning to record some footage of my birds doing things in real life, but they haven't been behaving well enough to get the clips that I need. Anywho, number 16, we've made our way back to the palace and we face off against the Mage Soldier. Mage Soldier as an opponent is a bit of an improvement over Teana and Jono. His deck has got a larger pool of cards to pick from. Though he does have some monsters under 500, the bulk of them are between 1500 to 2200, with the strongest being YuGiOh. The card in his deck that probably freaks me out the most is Ukazi. I'm not expecting to get myself under 1000 life points, but regardless, any burn cards are not ideal when we're dealing with low life point ranges. What is also concerning is the current state of the duel. He is kicking the ever-loving crap out of me, so I need to set a Labyrinth wall to protect myself. I didn't draw into too many equip cards turn 1, so I need to empty out my hand till I get those set up. Thankfully, we draw into a mystical elf and a megamorph. That is all we need to defend against this guy. Setting it in defense, I need to beef it up a bit more. So, whilst we wait for the inevitable trigger of the self-KO trick, I'm going to get through some more trivia. We've covered cards like Spellbinding Circle and Shadow Spell, so I think it's fair that we go through the cards that reverse those effects. The card I'm talking about, which is specific to Forbidden Memories, is the spell card Cursebreaker. Cursebreaker in Dark Duel Stories, Dark Duel Stories 2, Forbidden Memories, and Duel Monsters 4 Battle of the Great Duelists all behave the same way. They reverse the effects of stat reducing cards used by your opponent. For example, if Koiba pulls out a Shadow Spell against your Twin Head and lowers it down to 1800, using a Cursebreaker will bring that Twin Head back up to 2800 attack. Cursebreaker in Forbidden Memories can be won from a random drop from Duelmaster K, Labyrinth Mage, Mage Soldier, Mountain Mage, Neku, and all 3 villages. though you could just redeem it from the password machine for 10 star chips. Or if you really feel like it, you can fuse a key mace with an elegant egotist. As for cards that fuse using Curse Breaker, if you take a Megamorph and fuse it with a Curse Breaker, you'll end up with a trap, Reverse Trap. Or, beats me why the hell you do this, if you fuse a Curse Breaker with a Spellbinding Circle, you'll end up with a trap card, Fake Trap. Which by the way you cannot even use because you fused into it. Anywho 17, we'll reach the end of the duel. Mage Soldier goes down, and we achieve this victory in one try. Picking up the required plot device, which is a map literally on the floor, we make our way back to Sadin and start the Forbidden Ruins cutscene. Now, all of you must be asking, why are we still using maps when Millennium Egypt in this multiverse clearly has access to the internet because we used Millennium Teams earlier to call ourselves from the present? It's simple really, let me break it down for you. And there you go, clear as mud. With the mages unlocked, it's time we take on the Ocean Shrine. So, the latest developments in our story is that Haishin is noticeably pissed that he's coming second in the kill count. Looking to outdo this vindictive virus, he spread himself across numerous shrines, causing havoc to its inhabitants. Now that we're up to speed on the current storyline, let's get back to the Ocean Mage. All the mages should make triggering the self-KO trick much easier, given the free 500 point boost to their monsters thanks to their field spells. Unfortunately for this duel, my first few hands resulted in Labyrinth Walls, so I've summoned those while I clear my hand to make way for more equips. The target this time is Spirit of the Harp. Due to his field boost, the strongest monster he can bring out is a twin-headed Thunder Dragon at 3300 attack. The Labyrinth Walls I set earlier are enough to wall it, given that I've set them to a Uranus Guardian Star. If I didn't have those, I would need a minimum of 3 equip cards on a monster with 2000 defense in order to protect myself from his oncoming attacks. Happy days there. What is unhappy however is my low attack stat. Having a base 800 attack needs a decent amount of investment in order to survive a 3300 attack. I'll need a minimum of 5 equip cards to make sure that I can out-survive a twin head. That's why you see me at the moment setting spell cards on my side of the field. I know that Ocean Mage's deck does not have a Harpy's Feather Duster, so safe to say, those are safe on my side. Whilst we play out the rest of this duel, it's time for some trivia. We've covered off Curse Breaker, so it's only right we move on to Reverse Trap. Reverse Trap in Forbidden Memories is a busted card. It can be obtained by fusing a Megamorph with a Curse Breaker, or a Megamorph with a Fake Trap. Alternatively, you can combine it using a Pocket Station. Reverse Trap's effect in Forbidden Memories activates when an equip card is used both on the field or in the hand. Yes, that's right, in hand. So right now I'm powering up a Lunar Queen Elysium. If this card were to hit the field right now while my opponent had a Reverse Trap, the 2000 points of stat boost we just got would work in the reverse. Hitting the field, it would be lowered by 2000 attack and defense. This card is actually the biggest threat to me this run, especially given that Labyrinth Mage, Forest Mage and Dark Knight all use it. And Dark Knight is a friggin' pain in the ass. I would rattle off some more fusion information about the card, but we're actually at the final couple turns of the duel. There's only a little bit of trivia left, namely what monsters combine with this card, and a bit of lore about the card itself. Passing the turn back to Ocean Mage, he crashes into us with both his shark and his snake. And he goes down. We win. Old Mate awards us a Melting Red Shadow, and we did this in one try. On to Secmeton we go. Secmeton is a minor improvement over the Ocean Mage. His deck does have 2 cards that may cause problems for us, namely both Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster. Have I ever seen him use them? No, not really. They both only have a 1.95% chance of being included in his deck. As for the other cards, his strongest cards cap off at 2500, which boosted by the field make them about 3000, and his weakest, honestly, they start at 600, that being Saggy the Dark Clown, but for everything else it should be well above 15, which is great. No need to rely on lower level monsters, we're going to be putting all our efforts into our mystical elf. And returning with the effort is the remainder of the trivia. Reverse Trap can fuse with 4 cards. If you mix it with a Darkfire Dragon, you'll end up with a Karyu Shin. If you mix it with a Raised Body Heat, you'll end up with Horn of the Unicorn. If you mix it with a Millennium Shield, you'll make a Stop Defense. And if you mix it with a Widespread Ruin, you'll make a Fake Trap. On to the TCG. Reverse Trap was released in Starter Deck Yugi and appeared in the anime during episode 10 of the YuGiOh 5Ds episode where Yusei had a duel against Armstrong. As for the card's artwork and lore, the name of this card in Japanese is Amano-Jaku's Curse, and that's what the card artwork is based upon. Last time I checked, Amano-Jaku looked like this. Don't know what they were smoking when they made the artwork of this card, but nonetheless, that brings us to the end of the trivia for Reverse Trap. Getting back to the duel, we're now down to about the last couple turns of the match. We've managed to trigger the self KO trick with our mystical elf, and now we just sit back and watch him hit himself into us repeatedly. I'm really appreciating how much faster these later game duels are taking. Grinding out the early game was a punish, but this is the end goal as a result. Now we are short a couple life points, so I do fuse into a Dark Witch to bait out an attack. Things start getting a teensy bit scary now that he powers up his Sea King Dragon, but thankfully he attacked Dark Witch with Deep Sea Shark. And there we have it, attack 1 and attack 2, and High Mage Secmeton goes down. Old Mate drops us a Guardian of the Throne Room, and we did this in one try. The next shrine on our hit list is the Mountain Shrine. There isn't really any particular shrine that I'm too worried about, given that the only field spell that has a negative effect on us is probably the Dark Field spell for the final 6. And even with that, I do have some spellcaster monsters in my deck, so it just means we'll be using some different females this time round. Debating the Mountain Mage into attacking my Labyrinth wall, I'm pretty much safe. Unless he fuses into a Meteor Black Dragon, Twin Head is pretty much the strongest card he'll pull out on us. So let's continue with the trivia. Now that we've covered stat reversal cards, why don't we look at field removal, type specific field removals for that matter. And the first card we're going to look at is Stainstorm. Stainstorm destroys all your opponent's machine monsters and is obtainable from Bandito Keith and Sebek. Or alternatively, you can fuse into this card by combining an Electro Whip with an Umi, or a Follow Wind with an Acid Trap Hole. Stainstorm itself as a card can be used as material for 2 fusions. Mixing it with a Dark Hull will make Acid Trap Hole, and mixing it with a Metal Morph will make Puppet Ritual. Stainstorm in the TCG is called Acid Rain, and has only been printed in the Speed Duel packs, with its effects changed to destroy all machine monsters instead of just your opponents. Is Stainstorm a viable card in Forbidden Memories? Well, no, not really. You can use it against the final 6 to get rid of Metal Zoas and I guess Machine King, but in all honesty, that's only going to get you past Sebek and Neku. And at that point in the game, if you can't stand up to a Metal Zoa, you got bigger problems. We are now getting to the last couple turns of the game. I power up my Spirit of the Harp with several equip cards and leave her in attack position. One of the more annoying things I did notice with Spirit of the Harp is that she doesn't fuse with many other monsters despite being a subtype of female. She can't make a Mystical Sand, and I don't believe she can make a Neku Gale 2 either. But anywho, number 19, we defeat Mountain Mage, get a Dark Plant, and make our way over to Atenza. Oh, and we achieve victory in one try. High Mage Atenza has a decently strong deck. In his back row, he has access to Raigeki, Shadow Spell, Harpy's Feather Duster, and Swords of Revealing Light, as well as numerous equip cards. Like with Secmeton, my main worry is his Raigeki. From a monster attack power perspective, given that he has a Meteor Black Dragon and a Black Skull Dragon, we're dealing with about 4,000 attack points. Whatever we summon to the field that has 2,000 defense needs to have at least 4 equip cards invested in it to tie up with Meteor Black, but also make sure we pick the right Guardian Star so we have a favourable matchup against his cards. Arlone Way, for that example being a Jupiter, is not a good match against Meteor Black. Same goes for any Venus monsters against his Black Skull Dragon. Having our defensive wall on the field, let's continue with the type specific field removal trivia. And the next card on our list is Eradicating Aerosol. Eradicating Aerosol destroys all of your opponent's insect monsters, and ironically is obtainable from Weevil and aNOOBisius. Alternatively, you can fuse into it by combining a Goblin Secret Remedy with a Follow Wind, or a Goblin Secret Remedy with a Machine Conversion Factory. Fusing Eradicating Aerosol with Magical Labyrinth will make the trap card House of Adhesive Tape, which I guess makes sense, it is Fly Tape. Anywho, number 20, I'm gonna have to pause things there because it looks like we're at the end of the duel. Atenza goes down and he drops us a Marvelous. And what's also marvelous is that we did this in one attempt. With 2 mages down, it's time we tackle Seto 2, so we don't forget about him. Heading back to the duel grounds, we find out Teana has been captured. Being the only other female we've seen still alive in this game, we run to her rescue. Entering a labyrinth, we're confronted by Tattoo-Faced McGee, who challenges us to a duel. Oh boy, this guy is a bit of a pain in the ass. Keeping with his labyrinth motif, he has a higher chance of wasting our time summoning labyrinth walls. He may also summon a Gate Guardian, which could be a problem for us if we don't load up our defenses in time. As for his back row, we need to be cautious. That's where the problem is. He's one of the few opponents that carries a reverse trap, but also a stop defense. Reverse trap is problematic for more obvious reasons, and stop defense is really more of a hindrance if I leave an unsuspecting labyrinth wall on the field to wall off his twin-headed thunder dragons. Anywho, number 21. Whilst we bolster our defenses, let's continue on the trivia for Eradicating Aerosol. The card artwork for Eradicating Aerosol in the original OCG had the word God written on the person's hand. It was undoubtedly removed from the international release, but I just have no idea why it was there in the first place. Moving on to Eradicating Aerosol's anime appearances, it popped up a total of 5 times. It first appeared in episode 64 when Weevil used it against Joey to destroy his pinch hopper. In episodes 78, 87, and 124, it appeared again in Joey's flashbacks. But lastly, in episode 189, it was used by Weevil once more to trigger the same strategy he used to destroy his pinch hopper to summon his Insect Queen. And that's about it for Eradicating Aerosol. Getting back to the duel, we are very close to triggering the self-KO glitch. I think we are due for about 1 attack from a twin head before he starts attacking into us. Minus 700, and there we go. Gotta love Mystical Elf, she is most likely our MVP for this run. Especially because I'm expecting it to be powered up by the Darkness Field for the final 6, rather than be dropped down like Spirit of the Harp. Passing the turn back to me, we can stand to cop a little bit more damage, so I'm going to fuse into a Neku Gal number 2 to bait out another attack. If we're lucky, maybe one of his face towns can attack us now that we're low enough. And there we go. Gold Skull Mammothmon attacks us for the win, Labyrinth Mage goes down, and he awards us a Goddess with a third eye, and we achieve victory in 1 try. Navigating the maze once more, we eventually come face to face with Haishin, Seto, Teana, and a random cone-shaped dude in the background. Seto has yet to learn his lesson that no means no, so we confront him in the duel. It is tempting as frick to spank this guy into oblivion for generally being a pain in my butt during each playthrough of this game, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the high road on this one. In life, sometimes the only way to win is by not playing, and I simply have nothing to prove to this guy. So I'm going to sit back and just watch him embarrass himself. Seto 2's deck is probably the biggest improvement over all our prior opponents. He is the second strongest up at this point in the game, with the next strongest being Kepura. The strongest cards in his deck that we need to worry about are the things he's already summoned, those being his Gate Guardian and potentially a Meteor Black Dragon. From a back row perspective, he also carries a few things that we're not looking forward to, those being Raigeki, Crush Card, Shadow Spell, and Harpy's Feather Duster. Thankfully, I've amassed a metric buttload of equip cards, not an imperial buttload, a metric because it's bigger, and we're sitting comfortably at 7,000 defense points. Having observed the AI's behavior, they tend to attack with the card that they summon on the field first before going for any other card on the field. The only exception to that is if the AI can see a win using one of their other cards. Anywho, 22, wow, we're up to 22. I've just sort of had a small realization as to what sort of madness I've inflicted upon this game. I have actually found some of these later duels easier than what I would have expected planning out another challenge. Yes, there are a crap load of equip cards, but I wouldn't think at this point of the game I'd be running into the final 6 with a deck comprised of monsters less than 1000 attack. I guess by extension, I've also ticked off that challenge run too. But enough of that. Getting back to the duel, we put ourselves in range for the self-KO trick. Attacking, oh my god, sorry, I just saw that dealt 4,300 points of damage. Seto 2 awards us a Kagemusha of the Blue Flame, and we have achieved victory in 1 try. Heading back to the duel grounds, we bid adieu to our friends, and it's time to take on the remaining mages. Up next on our list is the Meadow Mage. Meadow Mage on paper shouldn't be too difficult an opponent for us, but when I look through his deck in detail, he's actually a pretty good counter against us. On top of his obvious field spell boost, A number of his warrior and beast warrior monsters alternate guardian stars to counter a number of our defensive monsters. The monsters in his deck have stars that are picked out of the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus table. Those counter both signs of Lunar Queen Elysium, Spirit of the Harp, and Mystical Elf. As for Arlo, he has a number of pyro monsters to counter hers as well. Why is that a problem if we're playing defensively? Well, it's more on the strategy of getting my life points down to the red zone that makes this a problem. A miscount of 500 here and there is probably enough to lose me the duel, but I digress. The other cards that we need to be wary about is mainly one card in his back row, and that's Stop Defense. But right now, I think I've topped myself up enough to defend against him, so let's crack on with the trivia. The next type specific card we're going to cover off is Breath of Light. Breath of Light destroys all of your opponent's rock monsters, and is obtainable in Forbidden Memories from Isis and Nitemare. It can be fused by mixing a Follow Wind with a Wasteland, or a Goblin Fan with a bad reaction to Samochi. As for the fusions it itself is part of, if you mix a Breath of Light with a Prisman, you end up with a Violet Crystal. If you mix it with an Umi, you'll end up with a Power of Kaishin, and if you mix it with a Follow Wind, you'll end up with a Goblin Fan. I'll have to cover off its anime appearances in the next duel, because we seem to be in our desired life point range. Smacking his monster tamer over the head with our harp, the duel is won. Meadow Mage drops us a Shadow Spectre, and we regrettably did this in 2 attempts. Told you this guy was a surprisingly bad matchup against us. And speaking of annoying matchups, we're up against Kepura. Kepura's deck can go one of 2 ways. He can either go hyper offensive with his Gate Guardian and Black Skull Dragon, or with Meadow on the field, he can go the complete opposite friggin' direction, summon a Wall Shadow, a Millennium Shield, and a Labyrinth friggin' Wall. Judging by my tone, what do you think this guy did to me this duel? That's right, he went friggin' defensive. As a consolation, however, he no longer has a stop defense in his deck, so I'm no longer worried about him flipping my cards in the wrong way if he summons a Gate Guardian. What he does have that might be problematic is a Harpy's Feather Duster, in case I'm trying to stack my back row to defend myself. Knowing what you know about this potentially being a duel of attrition, let's continue on with the Breath of Light trivia. This time, we look at its anime appearances. Breath of Light appeared in Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode 2. Taya used this card against Joey to destroy his Rock Ogre Grotto 1. It then appeared in Episode 13 in Yami's hand during his duel against Bakura, and then later in Episode 25, you can see it in Taya's hand during her duel against Mai. Moving on to Battle City, it also appeared in Episode 53 on the poster that Yugi and Tay were reading about the new Duel Monster shop, and then again in Episode 60 you can see it in Seto Koiba's briefcase, like with all friggin' things, when he bribed that one guy to duel him so he can summon his obelisk. It then also appeared in Episode 66, surprise surprise, in Kaiba's briefcase before he closes it, and lastly, it appeared in Episode 109 during Lecter's flashback. And that's about it for the anime. Let's now look at the TCG. And boy oh boy, is this card hard to get a hold of. It only debuted in 2 packs, one being the Duelist League Series 10 participation card, which was released in 2006 when you participated in the Duelist League, and later again in 2011 in the World Championship 2011 card pack. It has not been reprinted since. It is out of stock on TCG Player, but the last market price was $95. Highest price observed was $969.69. Double nice right there. And that brings us to the end of the trivia for Breath of Light. Getting back to the duel, we are at a dangerous 550 life points. What am I doing? Nothing. We wait for him to attack us with his Dragon Champion and obtain victory once more without attacking. We win. Kepura goes down and he drops us a Sogen. Very fitting. We also did this in 1 try. With 2 mages left until the final 6, our next fight is against the Forest Shrine. As you recall from some of my earlier trivia, Forest Mage is one of the few opponents in this game that carries a reverse trap. It has a 2.34% chance of being included in his deck, which is the 3rd most likely card to be picked as part of his deck composition formula. That's not good for us. Another thing that is slightly annoying is his deck. It has a few defensive monsters which can slow the game down for us, namely Cocoon of Evolution. So, with that said, whilst we set up against him, let's continue on to the type-specific destruction cards and move from Breath of Light over to Eternal Drought. Eternal Drought in Forbidden Memories destroys all of your opponent's fish monsters. Will you ever use this in Forbidden Memories? Probably not. Breath of Light before was useful. It takes out Labyrinth walls. Eradicating Aerosol is also useful. That literally takes out anything aNOOBisius can throw at us, from Ultimate Great Moths down to his Javelin Beetles. Eternal Drought, however, is really only here to take out the random Fortress Whale or Man-Eating Black Shark you might come across. And if you're struggling against those, I don't know, go play Ratio for Destruction or something. It is objectively easier than Forbidden Memories if you can put up with the grinding. I can say that now because I'm currently in the process of playing it, and that random type matchup system is all I really need to win so far. Eternal Drought in Forbidden Memories can be obtained from Isis, Nitemare, Ocean Mage, and Shadi. It can be fused by mixing an Umi with either a Tremendous Fire, a Dark Hole, or a Mystical Moon. As for the TCG, Eternal Drought debuted in one pack. That was Gold Series 4 Pyramids Edition, and has not been reprinted since. As for its anime appearances, well, there are none. Sorry, nothing left to say there. And that brings us to the end of the trivia. Getting back to the duel, we are on equal life points with this bloke. Powering up an Arlone Way with a Megamorph, we see his reverse trap pop. We lost 1,000 attack points, but thankfully we're at 4,600, so it wasn't that much of a hit to us. Winning the duel, Forest Mage awards us with a legendary Bean Soldier, and we did this in one try. With the power of the Bean on our side, we take on aNOOBisius. Anubis Man has a less annoying deck than his lower counterpart. His back row does not have a reverse trap. Happy days there. Unhappy days, however, is that he has Harpy's Feather Duster. Why is that a problem? Well, Bandage Lips runs a perfectly ultimate Great Moth, which boosted on this field hits for 4,000. Very spoopy indeed. To counter that, we either need to rely on a cycle where he doesn't summon it, or have 4 equip card investments on our Mystical Elf or Spear of the Harp. Hence why the Feather Duster might be a problem if I'm stacking the field. As you can see from the current duel, we managed to land the former. No Puggum for us. Hooray. Anywho, number 23, whilst we set up, let's continue our trivia. Our next type Raigeki is Warrior Elimination. Warrior Elimination destroys all of your opponent's warrior monsters, if you haven't gathered that already. The card can be obtained via S-Tech from Kepura, Secmeton, Koiba, Yami Bakura, and Seto 2 and 3. It cannot be made via fusion unlike our prior cards. Warrior Elimination can be fused with a Zanki to make Armored Zombie, and can be fused with either a Monster Tamer or Beautiful Beast Tamer to make Electro Whip. If you didn't notice via those fusions, yes, Warrior Elimination did what it said. Killed those warriors. The leftover pieces became the fusion result. If you're asking how, well, the card artwork literally has the crosshairs of a sniper, so I'll let your imagination aim on that one. In the TCG, Warrior Elimination was printed in Tournament Pack 7, Gold Series 2009, Legendary Collection Kaiba Mega Pack, and Speed Duel Attack from the Deep, and it has not made any anime appearances. Probably for a good thing, they likely would have had to censor it. Speaking of things that should be censored, my absolute destruction of aNOOBisius. As we went through our trivia, we got him down to 2,800 life points, which is the exact amount of damage he just copped right now, attacking into me with his Rabid Horseman. aNOOBisius went down. He dropped us a Goki Ball, and we did this in one try. We are now onto the last shrine of this run, the Desert Shrine. Our masked opponent has no back road to oppose us, or any strong cards in general to oppose us. This guy still has monsters under 1,000 attack in his deck, which could regrettably slow things down for us. His field does power up our Labyrinth wall, so I guess that's neat. Conscious of the amount of trivia I still have to get through, I think I might just jump straight into the next type Raigeki, and this time we're going to look at the card Eternal Rest. Eternal Rest in Forbidden Memories destroys all of your opponent's zombie monsters. This is completely different to its effect in the TCG, where it destroys all monsters on the field with equip cards. In Forbidden Memories, you can obtain Eternal Rest from Isis, Nitemare, and all 3 Setos. Or alternatively, you can make this card via fusion by combining an Elf's Light with a Silver Bow and Arrow. The following cards can be created when you combine them with an Eternal Rest. If you mix Armored Zombie with Eternal Rest, you'll end up with a Sword of Dark Destruction. If you mix it with a Kunai with Chain, you'll end up with a ritual card Novok's Prayer. Moving on to the TCG. Eternal Rest debuted in Dark Beginnings 1 and was also released in Spell Ruler, Speed Duel Scars of Battle, and Spell Ruler 25th Anniversary Edition. and surprisingly, it has made no anime appearances. You'd think it would have been snuck into some plot device in any Bones episode, but I guess it is what it is. That's about it for the Eternal Rest trivia, because we're on to our final turn. Powering up our exhaustively defensive Arlonway, we switch it to attack mode and let the duel play itself. Attack 1 with Mystical Sand, Attack 2 with Stone D, and Attack 3 with Practical. We win. Desert Mage goes down and he drops us a Mushroom Man, and we achieve victory in one attempt. I think that was our fastest shrine battle thus far. Anywho, number 23, we are now up to the last High Mage, and this time it's Martis. Martis is about as threatening as his lower mage. At least his deck doesn't have any monsters under 1000 attack. Whoops, I lied, it freaking does. But they're at least sitting there at a deck composition rating of 0.1%. His strongest card by a narrow margin is Great Mammoth of Goldfine. His second strongest is Zoa. Not even a card boosted by his own field. Same goes for his next 3 strongest cards. But regardless, that doesn't matter. We power up a Mystical Elf, and I think we still need a small amount of chit damage. So, while that happens, let's continue on with the type specific trivia, and we're on to the last card of that list, Dragon Capture Jar. The trivia for this one may span a duel or so I'll give you part 1 for now. Dragon Capture Jar is probably one of the more useful cards in this game. For those living under a rock, Dragon Capture Jar destroys all of your opponent's dragon cards, and its intended target in this game is Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. You can obtain Dragon Capture Jar from Darknite, High Mage Kepura, Koiba, PegaSUS, and Seto3. Or alternatively, you can fuse into it by mixing a Dragon Treasure with a Muyan Curry. Moving on to other card combinations, if you mix a Dragon Capture Jar with a Crawling Dragon, you will end up with a Dragon Zombie. Another fusion you can do is mix it with a Tremendous Fire to make a Widespread Ruin. I'll pause for now because we're on to the final turn. Attacking into my Mystical Elf with his Bakura box, Martis goes down. Mask of the Crappy Duelist drops us a Stone Armadillo, and we achieve victory in one try. No, you gets the Millennium Scales. No, you get the Millennium Scales. Wait, that's me. Crappy jokes aside, we have defeated all the High Mages without attacking, and it's on to our last challenge, the final 6. A smart person would go back and grind, maybe go ahead and obtain a Dragon Capture Jar, or a Warrior Elimination, you know, the things that would actually be useful for the final 6. What did I do? None of that whatsoever. Anywho, 24 to the floor, I was sure, we are up against Sebek. This is our second encounter with a Dark Field, which has a negative impact on 2 of our female monsters, those being Spirit of the Harp and Lunar Queen Elysium. The strongest card we need to contend with against Sebek is Metal Zoa, and we thankfully have a Labyrinth Wall in our hand to deal with that. As for his back row, Shadow Spell is the only real threat I can see there. It is worth noting that the final 6 all possess the Millennium Eye ability. This means that they are not stupid enough to attack into a face down Labyrinth Wall, so don't expect that to be coming in clutch anytime soon. The main thing I need to be careful of with the final 6 is getting myself into that red life point range. One slip up or one misplaced equip card and I am back to the friggin' start. So with that said, let's pick up where we left off on that Dragon Capture Jar trivia. Dragon Capture Jar is another example of trap cards that were created as spell cards in this game. As for the card artwork itself, it's gone through about 5 different face iterations. The original Bandai version, the OCG TCG version, the manga version, the Labyrinth battle game, and lastly, YuGiOh Dark Duel Stories. Dragon Capture Jar appeared in a couple episodes of the YuGiOh anime. In episode 2, PegaSUS uses this card against his duel against Yami when he summoned Komori Dragon. In episode 27, PegaSUS uses this in his duel against Koiba. In episode 43, Arm Ninja threw this card to capture Seto's Blue Eyes White Dragon, and in episode 45, another one tried to do the same thing before being shut down by a Trapmaster. In the Virtual World episode 108, this card appeared in one of Lecter's flashbacks, and in Waken the Dragons, it appeared in Kaiba's flashback during episode 149. Moving to YuGiOh 5Ds, it appeared in episode 121 when Taro Yamashita uses this card in his Turbo Duel against Crow. And that's about it for its anime appearances. Moving on to a small mention in the manga, Dragon Capture Jar was affected by the effects of Toon World and was actually represented as a monster card instead of a trap card. The wiki mentions that this happened in chapter 60. That brings us to the end of the trivia for Dragon Capture Jar. and all of the other type-specific Raigekis for that fact. Looking at our hand, Key Mace is trying her best, so we decide to fuse her with Lunar Queen Elysium into a Dark Witch. Work out that further muckery how a Dark Witch gets powered down by a Darkness field. Having maxed out columns on Sebek's field, I would love to drop a Dark Hole on this. It'd be so satisfying to watch. But I have to hold off on that. I'm going to risk it for the biscuit and fuse an Angel Witch with an Air Naaman of Nefariousness to make Neku Gaotsu. I am short just a couple of life points before he attacks me with another card. I'm hoping his Launcher Spider takes the bait. And stupidly, I did not change its Guardian Star. That could have been very messy for me, but thankfully we get a clutch victory there. Sebek goes down and he drops us a Queen Bird. I will say now that we did not encounter any losses from Sebek at all during the final 6 gauntlet. Neku on the other hand, well, let's find out. Neku's back row has been rejigged a bit compared to his Crocodile counterpart. The cards we need to watch out for in his back row are Stop Defense and Harpy's Feather Duster. The former is more worrying to us. He has a 5.86% chance of having that in his deck. I need to beef myself up quickly, especially when he's got things like that Summon Skull running rampant. Thankfully, with the Darkness field, it's a field boost benefit to our Mystical Elf. Leaving that in defense as a Jupiter Guardian Star, we have walled off his Summon Skull. Why did I leave it as a Jupiter Guardian Star? Just for insurance against any of his other monsters. Anywho, number 25. Whilst we play out the rest of this duel, I think I'll continue on with the trivia. I've covered off all the type-specific destruction cards. Let's just cover off general destruction cards that didn't fall under that category. Starting things off, we're going to look at Crush Card. In Forbidden Memories, Crush Card destroys all of your opponent's monsters with 1500 attack or more. It can be obtained from Dark Knight, Haishin, Haishin 2, Kepura, Secmeton, Seto Koiba, Nitemare, PegaSUS, Seto2, Seto3, and Yami Bakura as a random drop. Or alternatively, you can fuse into it by combining a Vile Germs with a Metal Morph. I'll continue part 2 in the next duel because Neku goes down. He dropped us a Metal Guardian, and I sadly incurred one loss to this guy. We have finally caught up to Haishin, who is still looking rather agitated from that earlier Dirt Dueler incident. Guess it's time to duel. Haishin can give you a pretty hard time this run if you catch him on a Bite Cycle. The cards that cause us problems are his Raigeki and his Megamorph. And I guess on the rarest of rare occasions, he can also drop an Exodia on us if you're really unlucky. Looking at the hand we just drew, there's nothing much we can do. We have to drop an early investment into a defensive wall right now. Would have liked to have done it once I copped a bit more life point damage, but you gotta play the cards you're dealt. I'm hoping based on AI behavior, if he sees that he has a field advantage, he should not trigger a Raigeki so trigger happily. If I ended up wiping out his field using my own Raigeki and had a few extra monsters on my side, there is a higher chance of him using it to turn the tides back on you. Some of the more experienced players of this game can probably explain that to you a bit better. I'd probably call myself an intermediate. Probably good enough to beat this game vanilla, but not enough that I'd peel back the layers and speedrun it. Let's continue on with the Crush Card trivia. If you fuse a Crush Card with a Forest, you'll end up with the equipped card Vile Germs. Before I move on to the anime appearances, let me cover off some general trivia. The card has about 4 counterparts, which you probably already know about because most of them have been on the ban list. In no particular order, we have Deck Devastation Virus, Eradicator Epidemic Virus, Full Force Virus, and Grinning Grave Virus. Now, onto its anime appearances. Strap yourselves in, there are a bunch of them. Starting things off, Crush Card appeared in episode 23 when Kaiba used this against his duel against Yami. It later appeared in episode 26 when Kaiba used this in his duel against PegaSUS. It later appeared in episode 43 of the Virtual World on a rack of cards, like with everything else. Moving on to Battle City, it appeared in episode 53 on the new Game Shop poster, later again in episode 55 in the card shop window, and in episode 93, Kaiba uses this card in his duel against Ishizu. Back in the Virtual World, it appeared in episode 108 when Kaiba used this during his duel against Lecter. In episode 114, Seto uses this card in his duel against Noah, and in episode 116, this card appears in one of Kaiba's flashbacks. Moving on to the Battle City Finals, we see this card in episode 129 in one of Yugi's flashbacks. It later appeared in episode 135 in a duel with Kaiba against Joey. Moving on to Waking the Dragons, it appeared in episode 150. Kaiba set this card during his duel against Alistar. It later appeared again in episode 152 in Kaiba's flashback, and lastly, it appeared in episode 159 when Weevil and Rex are taken to a vault within Paradius' headquarters. I'll pause there. Haishin goes down and he drops us a Phantom Duin. That took a ridiculous amount of time. And sadly, we incurred one loss against Haishin. Picking up the shiny stick and looking at the Millennium leaderboards, Seto is pissed off that Haishin has been stealing all of his kills. Not wanting to be undone, he decides to take matters into his own hands and challenges us to a duel. Oh, the poor fool. He thinks he has the advantage because we're in our weakened state, still recovering from an illness. But, as you can hear from my voice, it's pretty much out of my system. But we're not going to tell him that. We're going to let him attack our key mace with his Gate Guardian. And by the looks of this cycle, there doesn't seem to be any ultimate dragons, so hooray for that. I have a tiny amount of trivia left on Crush Card, so I'm just going to finish it off here. In the anime appearances for Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Crush Card appeared in episode 34 in Jaden's duel against Kaiba Man. It then appeared in episode 164 when Makoto Inotsume uses this card against his duel against Cyrus Truesdale. And that's about it for the card appearances. Moving briefly to the TCG, Crush Card appeared in the Gold Series Booster Pack, Turbo Back Booster 1, Duels Pack Kaiba, Premium Gold Return of the Bling, love that name, Duels Pack Battle City, Millennium Pack, Structure Deck Seto Koiba, Legendary Dragons Deck, Legendary Collection Kaiba, Structure Deck Lair of Darkness, and the 25th Anniversary Kaiba set. That brings us to the end of the Crush Card trivia. Now let's get back to Forbidden Memories and give a quick analysis in Seto 3's deck. The key cards we need to watch out for are his Raigeki and his Shadow Spell, at least from a back row perspective. Front row, Blue Eyes Ultimate Friggin' Dragon. If things get dicey, I could always drop a few Megamorphs on the Labyrinth wall. Thankfully, we're already in range to trigger the self KO trick, given that his monsters are so strong. Attacking once with a Gate Guardian, we slap it shit. Attacking twice with a Meteor Black Dragon, we spank it upside their head. With Black Skull, we give it a kick up the butt. And with Metal Zoa, we send it to its room without supper. We win. Seto 3 goes down, and Haishin ain't looking too proud. And I'll stop the rap there. You can look at my Dark Knight rap video to hear the full version of it. Oh, by the way, we incurred 0 losses against Seto throughout this playthrough. Getting back to the story, Haishin has finally stolen all of the Millennium items and brings forth a Dark Knight. He has set his plan in motion to bring forth a calamity that is greater than the vexatious virus that struck me down this month. Unfortunately, like with all things evil and manufactured, they have the ability to turn on their owner, and that's exactly what happened to Haishin. Flipping off the Dark Knight, he doubles down his might and drags us down into a duel. We are now up against the hardest opponent of this challenge run. And no, I am not saying that unironically. This guy is a royal pain in the friggin' butt because his deck is basically consist of back row cards. What do we have to contend with? Well, my kids, we gotta deal with Stop Defense, Raigeki, Tremendous Fire, Megamorph, Crush Card, Shadow Spell, Harpy's Feather Duster, and Reverse Friggin' Trap. All of them have a sub 4% chance of being included in his deck. Offensively, he has Meteor Black Dragon and Black Skull Dragon. Though on paper, they're not too threatening, remember when I said he had a Megamorph? He friggin' uses it a lot. And mind you, he's not too much of a threat in a vanilla run. He is problematic if ever you're using a deck that wins via attrition or any obscure win condition. You do not want to drag duels out against this guy. We have gotten over our first hurdle at least. We've powered up a mystical elf without incurring a reverse trap. If I'm sounding a little dramatic, just know that it's because I've lost to this guy for the stupidest reasons. 3/4 of his deck is comprised of monsters between 1500 and 2500 attack. My life points would therefore need to float between 700 and 1700 to trigger the KO trick. If I ever get my life points under 1000, he drops a Tremendous Fire without fail. Around 1700, he ends up using a Megamorph or a Shadow Spell, and at 2000, he just stops attacking altogether until I get it back down again. And if I do that, he just uses the same prior 2 strategies. What I'm currently doing right now is loading up my back row to power up a Mystical Elf. I'm trying to do equip cards one at a time just to suss out if he had a reverse trap. Given that his back row is completely loaded, they're all done. Thankfully. With our beefy blue elf on the field, we watch as Dark Knight attacks into himself over and over again. In my own personal headcanon, I like to think that Mystical Elf is Simon Murren's wife. The bloke did well. Just like us, Darknite goes down and he dropped us the Torak, and we lost to this guy 5 times. With the hardest duelist out of the way, I'm going to say we're up against probably the easiest of the final 6 right now. Nitemare, as you're all aware, does not have any equip cards, spell cards, or trap cards. His deck is completely full of monsters, and going by that first turn, he didn't end up adding a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon to it. There is the possibility he could top deck it, but honestly, at the rate things are going, I think we're fine. Being attacked by 2 moths, we drop our trusty Mystical Elf on the field. Come on, Mrs. Murren, do your thing. I purposely select the Sun Guardian Star in the event that he does drop a Meteor Black Dragon. None of that matters now because we have another 3 equipped cards. 1, 2, 3. What I'd like to try and do is beef her up to be about 9999, 9999. But before I do that, I need to get my life points down a little bit lower before he starts attacking into me. That's where I need to have the math right in my head. I can summon my weakest monster so long as it doesn't have a detrimental Guardian Star. In this case, I used Air Nugget of Nefariousness and it decides to cop a hit from a Twin Head. Leaving me at 2100, I am quite literally 100 attack points shy of having his Twin Head attack into us. He does have his other face downs however, so I'm really hoping I can end this with 1 attack round. Attack 1, attack 2, yes, attack 3, and the last card, aw, such a shame. We're going to just chuck a few more equipped cards for the ha-has, and then hope he summons something strong again. That will do very nicely. Meteor Black Dragon gets annihilated by Mrs. Murren, and we win. Play that victory song, because we have successfully beaten Forbidden Memories without attacking at all. Would I recommend anyone trying out this run? Honestly, yeah, was easier than I expected. And here's our Duelist of the Roses card password. Time for the run wrap up. The campaign took us 82 duels to complete. Of that, we lost a total of 25 times. In free mode, we took 188 duels, which brings our duel total to 270. The average duel duration during the campaign was 6 minutes and 53 seconds, and the campaign itself took a total of 9 hours and 54 minutes, our longest run thus far. In terms of rankings, I'm placing this deck in the C tier. It would have been up there with the B rank, but I've penalised it for the use of an early Megamorph. Hey everyone, YuGiOh here. Thank you all so much for making it to the end of this video. It has been close to 2 months since the last proper challenge run, so I hope this video was well worth the wait. Before I sign off, I have a long list of thank yous I want to express to both my Twitch and YouTube supporters. On the Twitch side, in no particular order, I want to thank Alexis Bexus, Durfon3000, Dark69, Madios UK, Ranger Phantasma, Rancid Fever, Shanna Hart 33, Favio, Dark Shadow 2, Triv001, Donunu, and the elusive anonymous gifter that has given out like 45 subs in the past few streams. You peeps are amazing. I can't wait to set up the next Twitch Plays event with you all. To the awesome people on YouTube, I want to thank Wizards First Rule 57, who by the way was probably the core reason for me making that extended version of the Dark Knight rap. Following on, I'd like to thank Costerides, Lily Laser 666, Kalut 731, and Adair 3327. As always, you're all amazing. I couldn't ask for a better community to be a part of from both sides of my streaming world. Now that I'm back on my feet, videos should resume as per the norm, so be sure to like and subscribe to both the YouTube and Twitch, and hit that bell icon to stay notified of my latest videos and Twitch stream announcements. And as always, stay awesome people. Hope you all draw a Raigeki for the win, and I'll be seeing you all soon.